Chapter 1232. Princess Chin, it's not good to keep quarreling like this. Madam of the Prime Minister coughed in a low voice and said implicitly, "Well, what's wrong with it?" Xiao Wanru rolled her watery eyes and said with a little modesty, "I was thinking about Grandma's health just now, so I didn't notice it." Did they quarrel? Madam of the Prime Minister was sullen. They had quarreled so fiercely, but Xiao Wanru just noticed it. It's not a good idea to quarrel like this. It will damage the reputation of Marquis Xing's mansion. Madam of the Prime Minister took a deep breath, suppressed her sullenness, and said with a smile, "The reputation of Marquis Xing's mansion? Thank you for your concern. In fact, how much reputation is left now?" Xiao Wanru's lips changed slightly, and her eyes were cold. She said without hesitation. Madam of the Prime Minister choked and wanted to vomit blood. Was this what Princess Chin, the daughter of the Xiao family, should say? "Princess Chin, even if you don't do it for yourself, you have to do it for the reputation of the little heir. After all, the Marquis's mansion will belong to the little heir in the future." Madam of the Prime Minister changed the direction and tried to persuade her. She wanted Xiao Wanru to come forward and suppress the quarrel between Xiao Jing and Third Master Xiao. With Princess Chen's identity, even if Third Master Xiao was a reckless person, he would not dare to contradict Princess Chen. Now everything in the mansion belongs to Second Uncle, so it's up to Second Uncle to decide what to do. If it's up to me, of course I will stand on Third Uncle's side. We can't allow any woman with an unknown background to come into the mansion, Xiao Wanru said disapprovingly. Madam of the Prime Minister felt that she could not go on with this conversation. Her words made her uncomfortable. Did Princess Chen also come to make trouble today? She secretly looked Xiao Wanru up and down. Seeing that she looked natural, she couldn't figure out her attitude for a moment. "Princess Chin, you are a junior, but you are of noble status. If you say something, it's better than them quarreling like this." Madam of the Prime Minister said again. "Madam of the Prime Minister, do you think I am too indifferent?" Xiao Wanru asked lightly with cold eyes. "I don't mean that. It's good to be a harmonious family. They have already come into the mansion. Can't they have a good discussion?" Madam of the Prime Minister smiled a little awkwardly. Although she thought so, she felt a little embarrassed when Xiao Wanru pointed it out so mercilessly. Third Uncle's intentions are also very clear. He wants people to believe that she is the daughter of the former censor. We can't just rely on rumors. Our Xiao family still has to meet people in the future. We can't just rely on rumors to determine a person's identity. There are so many women in the Xiao family, so we can't let them ruin the marriage plans of the Xiao family. Xiao Wanru looked at everyone with a serious face and said slowly. This sentence was not spoken lightly, and many people heard it. The clan elders nodded one after another. It was indeed reasonable. Rumors were rumors after all. Rumors could be said in this way, and they could also be said in that way. They couldn't act according to rumors, right? Xiao Jing looked at his niece, who was sitting in front of him. He still couldn't see through her. He had a feeling that she wasn't what she looked like on the surface, but when he took a closer look, he didn't find anything wrong with her. "Princess Chin, Madam of the Prime Minister, my wet nurse can be a witness." Yang took 2 steps forward, bowed to Xiao Wanru and Madam of the Prime Minister, and said, "Of course, she had been prepared for this. Even if Princess Chin didn't say it, she would bring it up." "Your wet nurse?" Madam of the Prime Minister answered and asked in surprise. "My wet nurse was also separated from me at that time, but I found her before. She's here today. Many people know that she used to be my wet nurse. After staying in the capital city, she also keeps in touch with some old servants," Lu Nyang said. "Since she's here, bring her up." Xiao Jing waved his hand and called a servant over, asking him to bring her up. After a while, an old maid in her 50s was brought down. She knelt in the hall and kowtowed to everyone in the hall before saying, "I'm our Mrs. Wet Nurse." When our miss was in trouble, she disappeared all of a sudden. I could only return to my own home. For so many years, I have never given up looking for her. "Are you really the wet nurse of Censor Lu's family?" Third Master Xiao looked the old maid up and down and asked. "I am. If you don't believe me, you can ask some servants in other mansions. After I returned home, I still kept in touch with some old people. At that time, a group of servants in the mansion was scattered to other mansions, the old maid said. Then how can you be sure that this is your miss? An elder asked. Miss was brought up by me. How can I not know her? After so many years, although Miss has grown up, her foundation is still there. Moreover, there is a birthmark on Miss's wrist. I can recognize it at a glance. The old maid answered seriously. Miss, you've grown up. Her words were very reasonable, and every word was helping to verify Lu Nyang's identity. A smile appeared on Madam of the Prime Minister's face. She turned to Xiao Wanru and said, Princess Qin, you see, Miss Censor's identity is true. No one wants Madam Lu to fall into such a situation. She was very lonely at that time, with no relatives and no one she knew. In fact, it was very pitiful for her to fall into such a situation. Madam of the Prime Minister sighed and said in a kind voice. Xiao Wanru looked up and fixed her eyes on the old maid. Of course, she knew the identity of this old maid. This was a part of her grandmother's plan. Of course, it was not her grandmother who did it. A maid rushed in and said, Master Ho, there are a few people outside who say that they are Madame Lu's relatives. They say that they want to see Madame Lu. Lu Nyang's relatives? How could she have relatives? Unyang was stunned at first, and then her face became panicked. She looked up at Xiao Jing and hoped that it was not what she thought. Where did these idlers come from? Madame Lu's relatives are not here at all. Drive them away, Xiao Jing said unhappily. The sudden appearance of these people made him feel uneasy, so it was better to drive them away. Don't. Second brother can let an old maid come here. Are you going to refuse to recognize your relatives when they come? Third Master Xiao jumped out again. He just couldn't see Xiao Jing doing well today. He just wanted to stir up trouble. Third brother, can't it be settled if you don't stir up trouble today? Xiao Jing's face darkened and he scolded sternly. Second brother, how can you say that? Did I say anything wrong? An old maid came in and people believed her when she said that she was a wet nurse, but no one believed that her relatives came. If she said that she was a relative, could it be that Imperial Censor Lu came? That would be interesting. Third Master rolled his eyes indifferently and said, he really went all out today. Even if he had to fight against Xiao Jing, he would not let Xiao Jing get what he wanted. Thinking of what Third Madam had said to him before, Third Master was burning with anger. Anyway, he was going to separate from the family and would not be a member of Marquis Xing's mansion in the future, so there was no need to be afraid of him. They had already fallen out, so there was nothing else to say. Since they are here, let them in. Xiao Wanru said indifferently. Since Xiao Wanru said so, it was inappropriate for Xiao Jing to stop them. He frowned and nodded. After a while, the old maid came in. Unexpectedly, it was a rather old madam who walked in. Behind her were a maid and an old maid. The wet nurse's face changed dramatically and she knelt on the ground in shock. Her mother's eyes flashed in panic and she thought that it was not good. Old Madam stepped forward and bowed to Xiao Wanru and Madam of the Prime Minister in front of the hall. You are Old Madam of Imperial Censor Lu's mansion? Madam of the Prime Minister suddenly stood up after debating for a while and said in astonishment, Yes, I didn't expect that Madam of the Prime Minister still remembers me. Old Madam nodded. Is Imperial Censor Lu going to be transferred back to the capital city? Madam of the Prime Minister asked in surprise. She had never heard Prime Minister when mentioned this before. No, I'm afraid that he will never be able to return to the capital city after making such a mistake, Old Madam said bitterly. Madam Dowager said bitterly. After being implicated in such a matter, it was almost impossible for her son to make a comeback. I came to the capital this time to visit my hometown. I'm getting old, and I might not be able to return to my hometown even once in my life. Old Madam sighed. She was from the capital city, and her ancestral land was in a town outside the city. After her son was demoted, she suddenly wanted to go back to her hometown to have a look. Since she would never be able to return to the capital city in her life, this was the last time at her old age. Imperial Censor Lu originally did not allow it, but he failed to persuade Old Madam, so he could only ask someone to accompany her to the capital city. Fortunately, Old Madam was in good health, so she had nothing to do along the way. In order to take care of her, she walked for a long time before arriving in the capital city. At that time, Imperial Censor Lu was demoted. It was inconvenient for old Madam to see her old friends in the capital city after coming back this time, so she quietly went to the ancestral land outside the city. No one expected that an old madam who was demoted to the Imperial Censor's mansion thousands of miles away would actually come back to worship her ancestors. Originally, no one knew about this, but coincidentally she met Nanny Gao. Nanny Gao was the personal nanny of R and great elder princess and had some relationship with old madam's maiden family. After accidentally seeing her, Nanny Gao did not dislike her and specially came to visit her. Then when she came to visit for the second time, in addition to reminiscing about the old days, it was this matter. After that, there was the matter that R and great elder princess found the identity of the daughter of the Imperial Censor's mansion for her mother, and there were more and more rumors outside. After old madam briefly talked about her own affairs, she turned to the crowd and looked at them one by one. Finally, her eyes fell on Enyang's face. After looking her up and down for a few times, she said slowly, "It is said that my granddaughter is here, so I specially came to have a look. Is it the one in front of me?" Enyang panicked and her face turned pale. She subconsciously took a step back and her lips trembled. Finally, she made up her mind, gritted her teeth, and suddenly rushed over. She hugged old madam's leg and burst into tears. "Grandma, Grandma, I didn't expect to see you again. I thought I would never see you again in this life." After saying that, she choked with sobs. "I pay my respects to old madam." The nanny, who was kneeling on the ground, also hurriedly sat up straight and saluted old madam. Old madam pushed Enyang away forcefully and looked her up and down for a few times. She frowned tightly and was about to speak, but Xiao Jing interrupted her. "Come on, help old madam to sit down and talk." An old maid came over and hurriedly reached out to help old madam to sit down on the chair next to her. "Old madam, Enyang is your granddaughter, and now she is my wife. Speaking of which, our two families are relatives now, and you are also my elder. When you left, there was a rumor that a granddaughter was missing, so you asked your old friends in the capital city to look for her. Now it can be regarded as a reunion. Congratulations." Xiao Jing narrowed his eyes and said with a smile. Chapter 12:33. There was indeed such a saying at the beginning. Imperial Censor Lu was demoted. In the chaos, a daughter was lost. At that time, some old acquaintances in the capital city had asked someone to look for her, and many aristocratic families knew about it. After that, they didn't find her, so they left it unsettled. The reason why Enyang could be believed by many people quickly was that there was such a past at that time. Imperial Censor Lu was demoted from the capital city, and it was impossible for him to come back. Now there was a Miss Imperial Censor in the capital city, and her age matched. Even the wet nurse, who had been disappointed with her at that time, said so it was naturally true. Xiao Wanru's watery eyes curved slightly. She fanned the round fan in her hand unhurriedly a few times, causing a chill, and quietly watched the change of the situation. She wanted to see how Xiao Jing would deal with it. Xiao Jing's words sounded very gentle, but the threat in his words was very obvious. If Madame Dowager really met him by chance, she would not really offend him and ruin his plan. It was a good thing that his granddaughter became Madame of Marquis Xing. Anyone who got Madame of Marquis Xing for free would not care about anything else. It didn't matter whether it was true or not. At least it was enough to have the backing of Marquis Xing's mansion in the capital city. Maybe Imperial Censor Lu could come back because of it. Duke Xing's mansion used to be a family of powerful ministers. Although it had declined now, what did an madam in a remote place know? She didn't dare to really offend Xiao Jing. Nyang was originally in a panic. Hearing Xiao Jing's words, she immediately understood. After wiping away her tears, she stepped forward and bowed to Madame Dowager again. "Grandma, I am so happy to see you. I thought I would never see you again in this life. Now it's great. You can stay in the capital city to accompany me. As for father, there is always a way." Anyang's method was the same as Xiao Jing's. She said it with a hint of a threat. She was afraid that Madame Dowager would accidentally reveal the truth. After all, she and the missing Miss Lu did not resemble each other at all. When Xiao Jing said these words, he didn't think it was a big deal. After all, he had a high status. However, when Yin Yang said it, it inexplicably made people feel a little sarcastic. The identity of this woman was still unknown, but she treated her as Madame of Marquis Xing and said that there was always a way. How could a demoted official like her, a woman of the inner courtyard, have the final say when she wanted to return to the capital city? The so-called "there was always a way" was really ignorant and ridiculous. Third Master Xiao laughed mercilessly and said, "Who do you think you are? Who do you think you are? Watch your words, third brother." Xiao Jing's face darkened. Why should I be careful with my words? One look and I can tell that it's fake. You still want to use the Marquis's residence as a threat? Third Master was getting more and more self-indulgent, saying whatever he wanted. Third brother, old Madam has already admitted it. How can you say such things and humiliate sister-in-law? Xiao Jing really couldn't stand it anymore. He picked up the cup beside him and threw it at Third Master Xiao's feet. Third Master Xiao was shocked. He did not expect Xiao Jing to really make a move. Wait, when did I admit it? The old madam suddenly said. That's right, second brother. She didn't admit it at all. You are the only one who is in a hurry to acknowledge her. Third Master laughed when he heard this. What do you mean, old madam? Xiao Jing looked at the old madam with a gloomy look in his eyes. Anyang already felt that something was wrong. She knelt down with a plop, hugged old madam's knees and cried, Grandmother, although I am the Marquis, I had no choice. At that time, there was no other way. How could you not recognize me just because of some false reputation? Old madam, I had no choice but to have Anyang follow me. If you think that she has violated the rules of unmarried women, I apologize to you here. Xiao Jing stood up and bowed deeply to the old madam, giving her enough face. Based on this face and the face of Marquis Xing's mansion, as long as one was sensible, he would definitely acknowledge Anyang. Old madam, since your granddaughter has become like this, she is finally fine now. Madam of the civil minister also said. She seemed to be sighing. No one wanted such a thing to happen. Even if Anyang was a mistress, she had no choice. At that time, she was an orphan girl who was weak and delicate. It was good for her to survive. The three of them spoke one after another, and there was a hint of coercion in their words. Madam of the civil minister, stop talking. If you continue, old madam will think that our Marquis's mansion is coercion. You'd better let old madam say it herself. Whether it is true or not, there must be a reason. Old madam has not told the truth until now. Could it be that there is something wrong with her identity? Xiao Wanru interrupted the three of them rudely. As soon as she spoke, the other three could only let her finish even if they wanted to say it. Being interrupted by Xiao Wanru, old madam could finally breathe a sigh of relief. She looked at Anyang coldly and said, Who are you? Why did you pretend to be my granddaughter? I don't know you. Grandmother. Anyang was shocked. Madam, I don't care who you are or who you are. It has nothing to do with me. You can't ruin my granddaughter's reputation. Even if you are the Madam of Marquis Xing, I will resist to the end. Old Madam interrupted Anyang coldly and became more and more impolite. An old maid standing behind her stepped forward and looked at Anyang, who was kneeling in front of Old Madam, warily. Madam, you can pretend to be someone else, but you pretend to be our Mississippi. Our Miss looks completely different from you. Grandmother, I am really your granddaughter. How can you be so cruel? Anyang was so anxious that her heart trembled, but she did not dare to show it on her face. She grabbed the hem of old madam's clothes tightly and begged with tears. Xiao Jing's face darkened. This old maid really did not know how to appreciate favors. She refused to admit that she was the granddaughter of Madame of Marquis Xing and insisted that she was not her. As expected, she is a fake. Second brother, where did you find such a bitch? How could she make such a big fuss for such a bitch? Third Master Xiao laughed so hard that he swayed back and forth. He felt very relieved. Old madam, you have to be careful when you speak. This is not your mansion. If you speak carelessly, you will have to bear the responsibility. Xiao Jing ignored Third Master Xiao and said sternly, "Don't worry, Mark. If this is fake, I am willing to bear all the responsibility." Old Madam said calmly. Xiao Jing slammed his hand on the table and said, "Bear the responsibility? I am afraid that the mother of a former Imperial censor can't bear the responsibility. If Marquis doesn't believe it, you can ask the people of the Ministry of Justice to verify it on the spot." Old Madam said coldly and was not frightened by Xiao Jing's momentum. Xiao Jing trembled with anger. He did not know where this damn old woman came from. She was unmoved by force or persuasion. However, her identity had been confirmed by Madam of the Prime Minister just now. "Mardu, isn't she the servant girl of the Infanta?" A timid voice suddenly came in. No one knew when she had appeared at the door. It was an old maid. She seemed to have come to report something. After coming in and seeing Anyang, she was stunned for a while and said in a trembling voice. She had said it very softly, but after Old Madam's words, there was a moment of silence, so the old maid's voice was very obvious. "My mother's servant girl?" Xiao Wanru raised her watery eyes and said before Xiao Jing, "Go, bring her here." Yujia hurried forward and led the old maid in. The old maid knelt in front of Xiao Wanru. "Tell me what is going on?" Xiao Wanru asked calmly. Since it was her mother, she could ask clearly. "This is the servant girl of the Infanta. She used to follow the Infanta. After the Infanta returned to the mansion, she still served the Infanta. After the Infanta had an accident, she disappeared. I didn't expect that she was with you, the old maid reported. Second uncle, what is going on? Why is my mother's servant girl second uncle's servant girl? Moreover, she was raised outside and gave birth to a daughter? Could it be that there was something mysterious about it? Please explain it to me, second uncle." Xiao Wanru raised her eyes and looked at Xiao Jing coldly. Finally, she could raise her doubts justifiably. Third Master Xiao was also stunned for a moment and looked at Anyang in astonishment. Just now, Anyang mostly lowered her head or was sobbing, so it was inconvenient for him to keep staring at her. After taking a closer look, he actually saw something. He patted his thigh and said, "Yes, she is the servant girl of eldest sister-in-law." "What's her name?" "She is the only servant girl who came back with eldest sister-in-law." He really didn't expect that there were many servant girls around Infanta Qinghua. No one had expected that this servant girl would follow Xiao Jing and take eldest sister-in-law's servant girl as his mistress. His words sounded shameless. No wonder he wanted to find the identity of the Imperial censor's daughter. It turns out that she is eldest sister-in-law's servant girl. Third Master Xiao suddenly came to a realization. He looked at Xiao Jing and saw that his face was livid and pale at this time. He laughed out loud to vent his anger. "How dare you?" Xiao Jing said sternly, "Someone, drag this lowly servant who is talking nonsense away and punish her severely." "Wait, this matter is related to my mother. Before we figure it out, I'll see who dares to do it." Xiao Wanru sneered. Her cold eyes fell on Xiao Jing's face, giving him tit for tat. At this moment, she no longer hid her sharpness. "The hatred of killing my mother is absolutely irreconcilable. If this woman is really related to my mother, she might have secretly attacked my mother." It seemed shameless on the surface to take eldest sister-in-law's servant girl as his mistress, but if one thought about it carefully, it would be terrible. Did this servant girl stay with Infanta Qinghua long ago, or was she taken in later? If she was Xiao Jing's servant girl, did it mean that Xiao Jing had never been kind to the brother and sister-in-law of the first branch? The brother and sister-in-law of the first branch were no longer alive. One died in a foreign land, and the other died of madness. None of them had a good ending, but Xiao Jing had benefited from it. In addition, what Madam of the Jiang family had said at the gate of the mansion before, this topic was not only offensive. Madam of the Civil Minister, who was sitting on the top, changed her face dramatically. She was not stupid, and she was a little suspicious of Anyang. But even so, she still supported Anyang. But now, if what Madam of the Civil Minister said was true, she would be the one to lose face. For a moment, she was angry and resentful, and glared at Gu Shishu next to her. Princess Chen, you can't talk nonsense. Xiao Jing was angry and resentful. Things had come to a head, and he had to confront Xiao Wanru, especially in front of so many people. This was the last thing he wanted. Chapter 12:34. Second uncle, why are you afraid to say it? Could what second aunt said at the door be true? Xiao Wanru looked at Xiao Jing fearlessly and said without dodging his gaze. Even if you don't do it for yourself, you should think about how. Xiao Jing gritted his teeth in anger. Rest assured, second uncle. I agree with everything my sister said. Xiao Yuanhao stood up and stood beside Xiao Wanru. The little boy was not short. Standing beside Xiao Wanru, he looked fearless despite his childish face. He was no longer the child who only knew how to play in the past. Second uncle, if you can find out the cause of my father's and mother's deaths, I will also thank you. As for this woman, since she has something to do with my mother, please hand her over, Xiao Yuanhao said coldly. You? How dare you? Xiao Jing was so angry that he almost vomited blood. It was okay for Xiao Wanru to contradict him. After all, she was Princess Chen, so he, a disgraced Marquis Xing, couldn't compare with her. The only thing that could suppress her was her seniority. Now even Xiao Yuanhao came to join in the fun. Did they really think he was a piece of paper? Second uncle, if I am being presumptuous, I am willing to apologize to you. But if you really have something to do with the death of my father and mother, don't blame me for being disrespectful. Xiao Yuanhao stood upright in front of Xiao Jing, took 2 steps forward, and stood in front of Xiao Wanru. Looking at the little boy in front of her, Xiao Wanru's eyes turned red, and she tried hard to suppress the bitterness in her heart. In this life, besides her maternal grandma, she also had her younger brother. Even though her younger brother was so young, he subconsciously protected her behind him. But in the last life, they were all ruined by Marquis Xing's mansion. The bitterness in her eyes turned into a touch of blood, and she hid it deep in her eyes. Xiao Wanru looked at Madam of the Prime Minister beside her and said coldly, Madam of the Prime Minister, do you understand? Madam of the Prime Minister was also very regretful at this time. It seemed that the matter could not be cleaned up. Why did she get involved in it? In fact, it was very clear that Anyang was not an imperial censor's daughter at all. She was just a maid of Infanta Qinghua. No one knew when she had hooked up with Xiao Jing. Had the truth been exposed? Moreover, this matter was not simple. It was just a matter of a servant girl, which was not a big deal. Even if her reputation was ruined, it was not a big deal. But now it was related to the death of Infanta Qinghua and the former heir of Marquis Xing, which was a big deal. Not to mention her, even Bian Wenxiang couldn't resist it. And great elder princess was not easy to be trifled with. At present, Princess Chen was famous for being difficult to deal with because of Prince Chen's protection. What did Madam say? Xiao Wanru continued asking. This matter is your mansion's own business. I just think that Anyang is my savior, so I believe what she said. Since what she said is not true, of course, I have nothing to say. Madam of the Prime Minister sighed and said helplessly. Madam. Anyang was very anxious when she heard this. In the current situation, she knew that no one would believe her no matter what she said. She turned to Xiao Wanru and said sadly, Princess Chen, it is obviously and great elder princess's idea that I pretend to be the imperial censor's daughter. You also know that. Why do you say so now? His words caused the expressions of everyone present to change. My maternal grandmother has always had a bad attitude towards Marquis Xing's mansion. She has quarreled with my grandmother several times before. Why is she so good to you? She even gave you advice and pretended to be you? Xiao Wanru said with sarcasm in her eyes. What are you going to do next? Are you going to say that it was my maternal grandmother who asked you to follow second uncle? Her words made Anyang dumbfounded. She stammered and was so anxious that her forehead was covered with sweat. Princess Chen, I am Infanta's maid. Yes, I just knew it. So what? You are my mother's maid, but after my mother died, you followed second uncle. I really don't believe that there is nothing wrong with it. Guards. Xiao Wanru said sharply. 2 guards of Prince Chen's mansion appeared at the door. Xiao Wanru said, Take her away. The two guards stepped forward and were about to take her away. Xiao Jing was so angry that his face turned livid. How dare you? Who dares to take action? Second uncle, what if I take action? If second uncle is really wronged, and I will definitely offer a humble apology. But if second uncle, please forgive me and my brother for punching your parents. Xiao Wanru looked at Xiao Jing coldly and did not waver at all. The two guards took one of Anyang's arms and pulled her down. Seeing that the situation was not good, Anyang struggled desperately and shouted for help. Ma, save me. Xiao Jing was the only one who could save her now. Xiao Jing was angry and anxious. He shouted, stop them. I'll see who can take them out of Marquis Xing's mansion today. Second uncle, do you have to go against me? Do you have to hide the real cause of my father's and mother's death? Xiao Wanru said slowly with a cold look in her eyes. At this moment, Xiao Jing actually saw a cold and bloodthirsty look in his weak niece's eyes. She was weak and slender, but she had such a strong murderous look. Xiao Jing involuntarily took a step back. He felt his heart beating wildly, but at this time he couldn't retreat. Princess Chin, even if this woman lied to you and me, you can't take her away directly. You have to interrogate her clearly. This was to admit that Anyang was not the censor's daughter. Anyang exclaimed and struggled hard in a panic. Suddenly, she pushed away the two guards and rushed to Xiao Jing. Marquis, save me. He saved me. Xiao Jing winked at her and glared at her fiercely. Anyang immediately understood. She turned in a different direction in front of Xiao Jing and rushed to Madam of the Prime Minister. She cried and said, Madam of the Prime Minister, save me. I don't know anything. I didn't hurt the princess and the heir. Please save me. Looking at Anyang who fell in front of her, Madam of the Prime Minister took a step back and looked terrible. And save her. She also saved your life. Gu Shishu whispered in her ear. Madam of the Prime Minister was in a dilemma. She glared at Gu Shishu and had to beg for mercy. No matter what, it was true that Anyang was her savior. Princess Chin, catch her? This woman actually knows martial arts. Xiao Wanru suddenly shouted and stepped back. Xiao Yuanhao protected her and looked at Anyang with vigilance and a nervous look. Your Highness, she knows martial arts. I saw that she is so strong that the two guards couldn't pull her over just now. She even kicked the two guards several times, and the guards loosened their grip after being kicked by her. Yu Jia also stood in front of Xiao Wanru to protect her and shouted anxiously, she's good at martial arts. If she tripped someone, she might even fall to her death. Madam of the Prime Minister's face turned blue, green, and then red. After a pause, she pushed away Gu Shishu, who was holding her. Shishu turned around and walked out. After Madam of the Prime Minister fell, she had been recalling how she fell. Gu Shishu didn't get close to her, and no one else was close enough to trip her. Anyang was the same. At that time, there was a step between them. It seemed that everything indicated that Madam of the Prime Minister fell by herself. After Madam of the Prime Minister returned to the mansion, she also told Wen Shiqi about it. Wen Shiqi said that there was another possibility, that was, someone who knew martial arts nearby tripped her or threw a stone at the acupoints on her legs. In that case, she would definitely be hit. Of course, the person had to be close to her, otherwise she would be discovered. There were only women around her. Madam of the Prime Minister didn't think that anyone knew martial arts, so she just let it go. Now she actually found that Anyang knew martial arts. What else could she not understand? No wonder she had brought ginseng with her early. No wonder she could save her. It was obviously a trap for her to fall into. This woman was a liar and an imposter. She wanted someone to introduce her to a madam of an aristocratic family, so she set her eyes on Qin Haodong. It seemed that Qin Haodong's niece was not completely ignorant. When everyone was surprised just now, Gu Shishu's expression was not very surprised. Originally, Madam of the Prime Minister thought that Gu Shishu could keep her composure. Now she found that it was not that she could keep her composure. It was obvious that she was also involved in it. Otherwise, it would not be so coincidental that they met. It was Gu Shishu who took her to that place. She almost died. Her niece, whom she doted on a lot, almost schemed to kill her. Madam of the Prime Minister wanted to slap Gu Shishu on the spot. She treated her like a pearl, but this bitch schemed to kill her. Madam of the Prime Minister was so angry that her legs went soft. She left Marquis Xing's mansion in anger. Gu Shishu was stunned for a moment. She felt that something was wrong and hurriedly chased after her. Take her away. Seeing that Madam of the Prime Minister understood and turned to leave, Xiao Wanru said sternly. 2 more guards came out of the door. 4 guards came together. Xiao had received Xiao Jing's order and was going to pounce on Madam of the Prime Minister. Unexpectedly, Madam of the Prime Minister left without saying anything. She could only turn to Xiao Jing and escape to Xiao Jing's place. Princess Chen, this is Marquis Xing's mansion, not your Prince Chen's mansion. Xiao Jing took 2 steps forward, blocked Xiao Er's way, and said angrily. Second uncle, I'm sorry. Xiao Wanru said coldly. The guards came over and went to pull her away. Xiao Jing was furious and fought with several guards. His kung fu was good, and he didn't look as harmless as he used to. After all, he was Marquis Xing, so the guards of Prince Chen's mansion didn't dare to hurt him. 2 guards of Marquis Xing's mansion jumped out of nowhere and fought with each other. What's going on? Are they fighting? A gentle voice with a smile suddenly came from the door, which made the tense atmosphere stiffen for a moment. No one knew when Chu Luchen had appeared at the door. On the gorgeous black and white imperial robe, a 4-clawed golden python was shining with sharp claws and teeth. With his hands clasped behind his back, he was elegant and handsome, which was the complete opposite of the atmosphere in the hall. He raised his handsome eyes and gave off a gentle and noble aura. Even though he was just standing there, the atmosphere around him shocked Xiao Jing. He took a step back subconsciously, and his heart beat wildly. Chu Luchen was here. Why was he here? Shouldn't he be in the palace at this time? Chapter 12:35. Chu Luchen walked in slowly, looking elegant and noble. When he came to Xiao Wanru, he slowly turned his head, reached out to hold Xiao Wanru's hand and walked a few steps toward Xiao Jing. He slightly raised his long and narrow eyes, with a lazy smile on his lips and his eyes as dark as ink. Marxing, are you going to fight with me? He waved his hand, and the guards of Prince Chen's mansion stepped back. Seeing Chu Luchen, Xiao Jing seemed to be poured a basin of ice water on his head. He sobered up from the beginning to the end and signaled his guards to step back. He composed himself and bowed to Chu Luchen. Your Highness. Did my princess offend Marquis Xing? Chu Luchen asked curiously. No, I was too aggressive just now. Please forgive me, Princess Chen. Xiao Jing lowered his head and apologized to Xiao Wanru. Second uncle, I was also too aggressive just now. Xiao Wanru said softly. She looked gentle and didn't look as aggressive as before. Since it's not my princess's fault, what does Marquis Xing mean? Could it be that you don't like this princess? If so, Marquis Xing, you'd better tell me, and I will definitely apologize to you on behalf of my princess. Chu Liuchen's face became cold and his handsome face became gloomy. It was completely different from the genial expression just now, as if he had become another person in an instant. He had long heard that Prince Chen was temperamental. One moment he was beautiful, and the next moment he could be a bloody storm. Xiao Jing really regretted it. Why did he fight with the guards of Prince Chen's mansion in the heat of the moment? Your Highness, my father fought with the guards of Prince Chen's mansion because he was cheated just now. Please forgive my father for being cheated. Xiao Hua walked over and said after bowing to Chu Luchen. He and Zhao Shiran had been standing behind and didn't come up to persuade him. But now they couldn't stand it anymore and came forward to explain. Cheated? Chu Luchen raised his eyebrows and his face became gentle again, as if it wasn't him who had a gloomy face just now. It's this girl. She claimed that she was the daughter of the censor. After father let her enter the mansion, he found out that she was a liar. She turned out to be a servant girl. She even wanted to pretend to be the daughter of the censor in order to enter Marquis Xing's mansion and replace mother. Xiao Huan lowered his head, looking very sad. His mother had just passed away, and his father wanted to marry another woman. As her son, of course he was angry. But no matter how angry he was, he couldn't go against his own father. Fake daughter? Chu Luchen raised his eyebrows and looked at his mother, who had been trembling. It's fake. She's just a maid. Xiaohua An's face was pale with anger. Anyone would be angry when something like this happened to their family. Then take him away. The Ministry of Justice has dealt with this kind of thing many times. Chu Luchen ordered gently. This kind of thing should be handled by the Ministry of Justice. I will follow your orders, Your Highness. Xiaohua An took 2 steps back and bowed. 2 guards came over and pulled his mother away. She still wanted to struggle, but Xiao Jing's eyes fell on her fiercely. She didn't dare to move and followed the 2 guards away obediently. Has the matter of the family tree been dealt with? Chu Luchen asked Xiao Wenru this time. It will be done soon. 3rd uncle's branch has been separated. Originally, there was still this woman, but now it's unnecessary. Xiao Wenru answered softly. Marquis Xing, can we start? Chu Luchen nodded and looked at Xiao Jing. I have to take the princess with me. I have to take princess to the palace to see Imperial grandmother. Okay, right now. Xiao Jing couldn't wait for them to leave, so he said hurriedly. What happened next was much simpler. Without the matter of Yang, the other things were not a big deal. Xiao Jing was very well behaved now. He didn't dare to say a word or ask anything, for fear that he would accidentally provoke Prince Chen. Prince Chen was ruthless, so he really didn't dare to provoke this prince. The frightened elders didn't dare to say anything. They took out the family tree and changed all the branches of the 3rd branch into side branches. Then they offered a few sticks of incense in front of the ancestral tablets. After they knelt down and worshipped for a while, the matter was over. Xiao Wenru followed them and asked Chu Luchen to wait in the Piaoyun courtyard. She went to the 3rd madam's courtyard. The 3rd madam was still lying in bed, but she was in good spirits. Seeing Xiao Wenru come in, she struggled to sit up, and Xiao Wenru reached out to hold her. 3rd aunt, lie down first. The 3rd madam lay down again, and the others in the room left. 3rd aunt, maternal grandmother, has already selected a few candidates. In a few days, Galmomo will send them to your new residence. 3rd aunt can choose 2 suitable ones from them to help 3rd older sister and 4th older sister get engaged. These people are not from big aristocratic families, but fortunately, their families are clean and they all have good character. If they want to get married, their age should be similar to 3rd older sister and 4th older sister. That was to say, if they wanted to get married in a hurry, they could. Thank you, Princess Chen. The 3rd madam was about to burst into tears. She had thought that she would not get much benefit from the separation of the family this time, but because of Xiao Wenru's proposal, the 3rd branch got far more than she had imagined. At this moment, she was both grateful and sad to Xiao Wenru. 3rd aunt, you don't have to be so polite. This is our deal, but that's all, Xiao Wenru said. The 3rd madam nodded to show that she understood. What happened in the past was like a thorn in Xiao Wenru's heart. Even though it was not the 3rd madam who killed her father and mother, she could guess something and just watched it happen. In the last life, the 3rd madam had also watched her step into the death trap, hadn't she? She was not a saint. She had never been a saint. Not only was she not a saint, but she was also a cold-blooded person, and it was impossible for her to have no grudges with the 3rd madam. What they had done before was a deal, which had nothing to do with the blood relationship between the 2 branches. In fact, it was the best for the 3rd madam to separate at this time. Marquis Xing's mansion was going to sink, and anyone who had anything to do with Marquis Xing's mansion would sink. After coming out of the 3rd madam's courtyard, she did not go back to the Piaoyun courtyard directly. Instead, she went to the Chu Huan courtyard, the courtyard where her father and mother used to live. The screen wall recorded the process of her father practicing calligraphy since he was a child, and there were also traces of her father and mother living here in love, but it was just a trace. She felt sour in her nose. Everything here should have been destroyed in the last life. If Xiao Huan moved in, he would definitely destroy everything here. With inexplicable sadness in her heart, she stood alone in front of the screen wall and raised her head for a long time. What's wrong? Chu Liuchen's voice came from behind her ears. She fell into a broad and thick arms, and the familiar breath made her feel relaxed. If Marquis Xing's mansion is destroyed, will there be anything left here? Xiao Wanru suddenly asked, still looking at the screen wall. In the whole Marquis Xing's mansion, she was most reluctant to give up. What she got was not her Piaoyun courtyard, but this Chu Huan courtyard, which was the warmth and affection she had pursued in 2 lives. It won't be destroyed. Chu Liuchen's voice was very gentle, but inexplicably reassuring. Definitely not? Definitely not. This was not just a reply, but a confirmation. Xiao Wanru showed a smile on her face and nodded. She turned around and saw that he was alone, so she couldn't help but lean back and ask, "Where is Brother Hao?" "I asked him to go back to school," Chu Luchen said. He took her hand and walked out slowly, but asked with a smile, "Can we go back now?" "Let's go back." Xiao Wanru nodded. The mansion was in a mess, and Zhao Shiran was very busy. Now she was the only official heroine in the inner courtyard. In the current situation, old madam couldn't make the decision at all. When the 2 of them walked out slowly, they passed by Xiao Jing's courtyard again. Xiao Wanru stopped and looked at the tall attic, which was really very conspicuous. She took a few more steps out. After taking a few steps, she suddenly stopped again and decisively took Chu Liuchen's hand and walked inside. "Your Highness, Marquis is not here. He is in another study outside. If you need help, you can go there to find Marquis." The old maid guarding the door hurriedly came up to stop them. Chu Luchen snorted coldly. 2 guards flashed behind him and pulled the old maid away. The old maid still wanted to say something, but she was hit hard on the head and fainted on the ground. When the other servants in the courtyard saw this, they all trembled with fear and lowered their heads, for fear that the guard of Prince Chen would come forward. At first glance, they could tell that this guard was not a reasonable person. Xiao Wanru walked to the attic, gritted her teeth, and raised her head. She had always had a doubt in her heart. She inexplicably felt that this place was suspicious. She wanted to go up and have a look. She just wanted to go up and have a look. There was no reason. She just felt that if she didn't go up, she would miss something very important. This kind of feeling came inexplicably, but it was very real. It was so real that she had an inexplicable sense of urgency. She bit her lip, and the corners of her lips turned red. "Do you want to go up?" Chu Luchen pointed up, and Xiao Wanru nodded. She quickly walked to the front of the attic, but when she reached the door, she was stunned. The door was locked by a big lock. If she wanted to go up to the attic, she had to pass through this place. However, it was locked by such a wide lock. It was impossible to get up unless she twisted the lock. "Where is the key?" Xiao Wanru asked. There was an old maid beside her who had been cleaning just now. Seeing them come over, she hurriedly lowered her head and retreated to the side. "The key is in the hands of Master. Master Ho." The old maid stammered. "No one has ever gone up here?" Xiao Wanru asked. "Few people go up, but I heard that there are some sundries." The old maid didn't dare to raise her head and was very flustered. "How many years has it been since you went up?" Xiao Wanru was very disappointed. The impulse just now slowly faded. Looking at the tightly closed window of the attic above, she felt very uncomfortable, as if something was pressing down on her heart. "But I usually don't go up. I only go up when I'm fighting, cleaning. Let's go." Xiao Wanru was extremely disappointed. She looked at the window above and turned around. "In fact, you can go up without the key." Seeing the reluctance in her eyes, Chu Luchen said with deep eyes. Chapter 1236. Love to Read divided by 5200 will provide you with wonderful novels to read. Update the latest chapter on medical skills of the Crown Princess as soon as possible. Your Highness, Your Highness. Xiao Jing strode over. After saluting them, he pointed up and said, "Your Highness, do you want to go up and have a look? I'll ask someone to clean it up first." Chu Luchen didn't say anything. He glanced up lazily and waved his hand to indicate that he didn't need to salute. Xiao Wanru looked at Xiao Jing calmly for a while and said, "Second uncle, you don't have to do that. I just feel that it's locked when I walk here. It's very strange. There are some old sundries on it. If your Highness wants them, I'll ask someone to clean them up and send them to Prince Chen's mansion. Some of them belong to my brother, and I don't need them at ordinary times, Xiao Jing said in a gentle tone. Thank you, second uncle. Xiao Wanru nodded. Your Highness, why don't you have a seat? I'll ask someone to clean it up right away, Xiao Jing said gently. He pointed to the main room and greeted them with a smile. Don't be in such a hurry. We still have to go to the Imperial Palace. We don't have time now. Xiao Wanru said slowly. It was understandable that she was a little overbearing in what had happened before. After all, it was related to her biological parents. At this moment, it was a little unreasonable for her to force Xiao Jing to clean up some of her father's old things in a hurry. After saying goodbye to Xiao Jing, they got in the carriage of Prince Chen's mansion. Sitting in the carriage, Xiao Wanru still frowned slightly. She just felt that there was something wrong with the attic. Xiao Jing's attitude was really too good. In the past, such an attitude was very normal. Xiao Jing gave people a kind smile. But today was different. Xiao Jing had fought with the guards of Prince Chen's mansion before, but now he was still so kind to her. She inexplicably felt a strange sense of incongruity. Was Xiao Jing afraid? Or was he guilty? Sensing her silence, Chu Luchen asked, Do you want to see that attic? Sensing her silence, he raised his beautiful eyes, which were clear and gentle. I really want to have a look. I always feel. Xiao Wanru couldn't explain it clearly at the moment. It was a feeling, but in fact, there was no evidence. I just feel that something is wrong. Is there a person hiding in it? In fact, this was completely groundless. After saying that, Xiao Wanru also felt that it was ridiculous. How could there be such a thing? But she actually felt that way. Fearing that Chu Luchen would make fun of her, she lowered her head and pulled the round fan in her hand, feeling a little confused. I'll take you there tonight. Chu Luchen smiled and lowered his head. He did not ask her why she thought so, nor did he ask her for evidence. He said it as if he had gone to his attic to have a look. Can I go take a look? Xiao Wanru suddenly raised her watery eyes and said in surprise. She really couldn't rest assured if she didn't take a look. She really wanted to go and have a look. Of course, Xiao Jing will be taken away in the afternoon, and some of the things you found will be sent to the Ministry of Justice. It won't be easy for Xiao Jing to come back so soon, Chu Luchen said slowly. Xiao Wanru looked at Chu Luchen with her watery eyes and put down the round fan in her hand. She grabbed his sleeve and said in a trembling voice, Can I? Chu Luchen looked at her with a smile and saw a trace of redness flash across the corner of her eyes. Thank you. Xiao Wanru bit her lip. There were thousands of words in her heart, but she only said these 3 words in the end. Zhuozhua, if you want to thank me, grow up quickly. Luchen squinted at her, reached out to hold her in his arms, and sighed inexplicably. Xiao Wanru felt that she understood immediately. She pinched his waist angrily and buried her head in his arms. There was a faint fragrance of medicine in the cool air. She had thought that she couldn't say it out loud, but she said it so easily. Mingqiu Nun and Dr. Qi found that Dr. Qiu could make a medicine to fake death. Xiao Yenru used this medicine to escape from the Imperial Palace. When my mother died in a hurry, she couldn't have used this medicine, could she? Dr. Qiu didn't say anything before, but he said a few days ago that he and Xiao Jing had known each other for a long time, not in the capital city, but at the border. Xiao Wanru's long eyelashes fluttered twice with a dark red tiredness in her eyes. She pursed her lips tightly and suppressed the hatred in her heart. It was Xiao Jing's idea to go to the capital city. He said that it was through Gu Shishu, but it was just an excuse. In fact, his main purpose was to enter Marquis Xing's mansion. More than a decade ago, he also gave Xiao Jing a medicine to fake death. Her words were a little incoherent, and she became emotional. She pulled Chu Liuchen's robe tightly with her hand. When she talked about some past events, she almost couldn't breathe. My father is really dead. He was shot to death by an arrow. Xiao Wanru tried her best to maintain the calmness on her face, but her heart ached as if it had been stabbed by a sword. Those unbearable things were something she didn't dare to think about in her 2 lives. Her father, the first young master of Duke Xing's mansion, died in order to save Qin Huayong. But what if someone wanted to deal with him at that time? No matter how he hid, he would die, wouldn't he? There might be someone who wanted to help Qin Huayong, but there must be someone who wanted to kill her father. There was no one else except Xiao Jing. Qin Huayong should also know something, so he didn't think that she was the daughter of his savior. That was why he didn't care about her. He only seemed to want to raise another daughter, so he treated her in such a strange way. She really didn't want to tear apart those old wounds, but she had to. She bit her lip, and tears fell down. Feeling the wetness on his chest, Chu Luchen held her more tightly, reached out his hand and patted her back gently, with the intention of caring for her gently. He didn't ask anything or say anything, but just wanted to protect her. In fact, he should thank her, who slowly pulled him, a person full of darkness, up from the dark abyss. He only had her in his heart. His parents had always been close. She was the only one, and she was the only one. He held her tightly. After a long while, he comforted her softly. "It's okay. Everything will pass." Everything would pass, and those who had hurt her would disappear. In fact, the Empress Dowager was still in Huaguang Temple. She didn't go down the mountain, because she went there secretly. She only said that the Empress Dowager was still in the palace. The carriage went all the way to the mountain road of Huaguang Temple. After Chu Luchen got off the carriage with Xiao Wanru, they went straight to the courtyard where the Empress Dowager temporarily lived. The Empress Dowager was much better. Hearing that they were coming, she hurriedly asked someone to invite them over. Looking at the pair of handsome and jade-like children, the Empress Dowager was happy from the bottom of her heart. She put down the Buddha beads in her hand and asked someone to serve them tea with a smile. "Imperial Grandmother, are you feeling better?" Chu Luchen took a sip of tea. She took a sip of tea and said with a smile, "It's nothing serious. I just need to take care of myself." The Empress Dowager said with a smile. She looked up at Xiao Wanru and saw that although there was a smile on her little face, her eyes were red. She had also heard about what had happened to Madame Jiang. She thought that Xiao Wanru was sad because she went to Marquis Xing's mansion to attend Madame Jiang's funeral. She increasingly felt that this child was a good girl. Madame Jiang didn't treat her well at all, and had told her several times. It was hard for this child to be so kind and sad for this woman. After the matter of Marquis Xing's mansion is over, don't go back in the future. Your second uncle is also brainless. He even brought a mistress into the mansion. The Empress Dowager held Xiao Wanru's white and tender little hand and comforted her softly. "Imperial Grandmother, you are wrong. Marquis Xing is not brainless, but very smart. He is very scheming. Over the years, he has driven the first branch to death step by step, so that he can get all the benefits." Chu Luchen raised his cold smile and said sarcastically, "What's going on?" The Empress Dowager didn't understand, but she heard something about scheming and asked in surprise. "Imperial Grandmother, when the former heir of Duke Xing went to the border and joined the army incognito, Xiao Jing secretly left the capital city. The time when he left the capital city happened to be when the former heir of Duke Xing was killed. Someone can testify," Chu Luchen said. Yen Shi had asked her father to write a letter to confirm this matter. Now the letter was in Xiao Wanru's hands. Yen Shi specially came to Prince Chen's mansion and promised Chu Luchen that if necessary, her father could testify in person. This heir of Duke Xing was killed by Xiao Jing? The Empress Dowager finally understood something. This was not a trivial matter. She straightened up and asked in a hurry. "Yes." Chu Luchen nodded. Xiao Wanru lowered her head, bit her lip, and suppressed the grief in her heart. Then what are you waiting for? Ask your uncle to catch him. Is he still a human? How could he do such a cruel thing to his own elder brother just for the title of nobility? The Empress Dowager looked angry. The more she thought about it, the more she felt that Xiao Jing was abominable. She used to think that Marquis Xing had a good character and a good temper, but it turned out that he was so sinister. "I have sent his mistress to the Ministry of Justice before. The people of the Ministry of Justice should go to invite him later," Chu Luchen said lightly. "His mistress is the servant girl of Infanta Qinghua. At that time, Infanta Qinghua seemed to have died in an unknown way. The rumor that she was the daughter of the former censor was false. He made it up in order to let this woman marry into the mansion. What? The Empress Dowager could hardly believe her ears. This person is so vicious. It's not too much to cut such a person into pieces. You have to tell your uncle that such a person can't be kept alive. Imperial grandmother, don't worry. The Ministry of Justice will investigate it slowly and find out the truth. Chu Luchun said with a smile, Imperial grandmother, have a good rest. I'll talk to my uncle. Before the truth comes to light, don't tell anyone, not a single person. Don't worry. I know. The Empress Dowager patted her chest. Chu Luchun and Xiao Wanru's eyes fell behind a gauze curtain, where there was a figure. There was not just a layer of gauze curtain, but several layers. If they hadn't paid attention to it, they wouldn't have found that the figure was just hiding there, motionless. End of this chapter. Chapter 1237. Remember in 1 second, 800 mail sign /say, net wonderful pop-up window free reading. Nanny Wei covered her chest tightly and shrank there motionlessly, for fear that the people outside would see it. She had come in to take a snack box, but when she heard the words inside, she immediately stopped. She felt dizzy and her face turned pale. Something big happened in Marquis Xing's mansion. She had to find a way to tell her nephew in case he got involved in it. She had heard from her nephew that he seemed to have a good relationship with Marquis Xing. The people outside were still gossiping and no longer talking about Marquis Xing's mansion. Nanny Wei pressed her chest hard to suppress the shock in her heart. She carefully turned around and went back inside. After calming herself down for a long time and making herself look relaxed, she walked out with heavy steps. After talking for a while, the Empress Dowager looked tired. Chu Luchun stood up and said, Imperial grandmother, please have a rest. I'm going down the mountain. Let's return. The Empress Dowager said with a kind smile. She turned to look at Xiao Wanru and felt more and more pity for her. This child was also pitiful. She had thought that Chen Yu was the most pitiful, but she didn't expect that there was such a child who was so pitiful. Chen Yu can handle the affairs of Marquis Xing's mansion. If you don't want to go, don't go. No one will blame you. The Empress Dowager was going to support Xiao Wanru. No matter what others said, she intended to protect this child. Xiao Wanru's eyes turned red. She bit her lip, suppressed the sudden sourness and grievance in her heart, nodded hard and said, Imperial grandmother. No. Thank you, Imperial grandmother. Xiao Wanru was sad that her biological grandmother was so heartless to her, but the Empress Dowager treated her as her biological granddaughter. But she felt relieved after feeling sad. Chu Luchun held her little hand silently in his palm, which was warm and made her cold and stinging heart slowly calm down. In this life, she was not alone. He was by her side. Empress Dowager, do you want to rest for a while? Your body still needs to be nurtured. The scenery here is not bad. You can rest your body and mind. Mammy Wei came out with a smile and put the pastries on the table. Looking at Empress Dowager's face, she knew that she was in low spirits. Let's take a break. The Empress Dowager nodded and went inside with Nanny Wei's help. She said with a smile, the scenery here is really beautiful. You can go and have a look when you are free. Don't wait on me all day long. Since the Empress Dowager is resting, this old servant will go and take a walk. I really have to go and take a look. At the same time, I will offer incense and ask the Bodhisattva to bless the Empress Dowager with a long life. Nanny Wei helped Empress Dowager into the room, let her lie on the bed, put down the gauze curtain on one side, and carefully tucked her in. You, go and enjoy the scenery. The Empress Dowager said with a smile and closed her eyes. She was really tired. She had walked outside for a long time. After hearing the Empress Dowager's delicate breathing, Nanny Wei came out of the inner room. She ordered 2 little palace maids to go in and serve the Empress Dowager, while the other stayed outside. Then she quietly went to a Buddhist hall. This place was also the Buddha hall of Huaguang Temple, but it was very small and secluded. There were some everlasting lamps, but they were not from the big aristocratic families. It was usually deserted. When Nanny Wei came over, there was only a monk cleaning the everlasting lamps here. When he saw her come in, he greeted her with a smile. Seeing her come in, he bowed to her and then stepped aside. "I want to see Wei Dahai." Nanny Wei stood still and said, Wei Dahai once told her that if she wanted to see him, she could come here and tell the monk in the Buddhist hall. Nanny Wei didn't think about the reason now. There were some things that she didn't dare to think about. Wei Dahai was her only relative, and she couldn't watch something happen to him. The monk stepped aside, put his palms together, and nodded. "Lord Wei happens to be in the temple today. Please wait for a moment, Nanny. He is really on the mountain." What a coincidence! Nanny Wei breathed a sigh of relief and nodded. Seeing the monk leave, she breathed a sigh of relief and watched while waiting inside. Soon she saw a figure at the door of the Buddhist hall. She turned around and saw Wei Dahai coming in a hurry. And what happened? After coming in, Wei Dahai wiped his sweat and asked. Nanny Wei asked him to come here in such a hurry, so it must not be a trivial matter. "Do you know Marquis Xing?" Nanny Wei took Wei Dahai to stand behind a hanging curtain and asked in a low voice. "Marquis Xing Xiao Jing. I know. What happened?" Wei Dahai didn't understand what Nanny Wei meant for a moment, nodded and asked. "Are you on good terms with him? If he's fine, cut off contact with him." Nanny Wei paused and said, "If you have any correspondence with him, destroy them as soon as possible. He's going to be in trouble." Wei Dahai was confused. He really didn't understand why Nanny Wei suddenly told him this. What happened in Marquis Xing's mansion had not been spread outside. Madam of the Prime Minister, who was present at that time, just went back to the mansion and didn't have the face to tell others about it. Marquis Xing's mansion had long been in a mess. If Zhao Shiran wanted to send a letter, he would send it to his father. Moreover, no one thought it was so serious. What could happen to him? Is it about the mistress? Wei Dahai really didn't understand what Nanny Wei wanted to say. After thinking for a while, he asked tentatively. This matter had been spread outside, and he also knew something about it. "You really know about his mistress?" Nanny Wei was shocked and grabbed Wei Dahai's hand. "This mistress has nothing to do with you, right? This woman is Infanta Qinghua's servant girl, so it must be more than that." Nanny Wei had also been in the Imperial Palace for so many years. In this situation, it seemed that there was something wrong. Moreover, Infanta Qinghua was dead. If it weren't for the timely return of the current Princess Chen, the first branch of Marquis Xing's mansion would be abolished and the second branch would get all the benefits. There must be something wrong with Marquis Xing, Xiao Jing. Isn't that the former censor's daughter? Seeing Nanny Wei so flustered, Wei Dahai said in surprise. This matter really had little to do with him, and he didn't pay much attention to it in the past. No, it's not true. The former censor's daughter is just a servant girl of Infanta Qinghua. It seems that the former heir of Marquis Xing's mansion and Infanta Qinghua both had some accidents. It has something to do with Marquis Xing. You can't get involved in it. Marquis Xing's mansion is doomed. Nanny Wei warned him worriedly. Wei Dahai frowned. This was not a trivial matter. He had to go down the mountain to make arrangements. The great change in Marquis Xing's mansion was not a trivial matter. If Xiao Jing had an accident, it would involve a lot of people. And, I understand. If there's nothing else, I'll go down the mountain. Wei Dahai was about to leave. Nanny Wei grabbed him and was still worried. Dahai, tell me whether this has anything to do with you or not. Prince Qin has personally intervened in this matter. If there was no accident, Xiao Jing would be doomed. And don't worry. It really has nothing to do with me. Marquis Xing is just a nodding acquaintance of mine. We don't have a particularly good relationship. But this matter is not trivial. I have to go down the mountain to have a look. Wei Dahai became annoyed and said unhappily. Then go down the mountain first. Remember not to get involved in it. If you are really involved and Prince Qin finds out, even I can't save you. Nanny Wei warned him again. And don't worry. I won't provoke Prince Qin. Wei Dahai shook off Nanny Wei's hand and said. After that, he ignored Nanny Wei and strode out. It was really a coincidence that he came up the mountain today. Originally, he wanted to meet Nanny Wei and find out something from her. Unexpectedly, he got such shocking news. How could he sit still? He had to go back and discuss it with Madam. He always felt that although this matter had little to do with him, it was very likely to involve him. While Wei Dahai hurried down the mountain, the Ministry of Justice had invited Xiao Jing over. Xiao Jing was prepared when his yin yang was taken away by the people of Prince Chen's mansion. He knew that this matter could not be settled easily. After thinking about it carefully, he found that except for his yin yang's identity as Infanta Qinghua's servant girl, everything else was really nothing. As for his yin yang's identity, it was not found by him, but by Ru, an great elder princess. It could not be counted as his own. Thinking of this, he calmed down and felt that as long as he went to the Ministry of Justice to explain, they would let her go. It could not be helped that his yin yang could not enter Marquis Xing's mansion. Then he could think of another way. If his yin yang could not enter, his daughter would still be his daughter. He could just say that Ru'er's daughter, who was born by her concubine, could enter the mansion. In the worst case, she could be recorded as the daughter of the Jiang family. Thinking of this, Xiao Jing felt that it was not a big deal. He secretly went to a remote courtyard in Marquis Xing's mansion, where Xiao Yenru's daughter, who was born by her concubine, lived after returning. He told Xiao Yenru what had happened so that she could have an idea. Then he went back to the study and waited. Soon, the people of the Ministry of Justice came. Xiao Jing didn't say much and went with the people of the Ministry of Justice openly. This time was similar to the last time. At most, he just had to make a trip. Without evidence, whatever Xiao Wanru said would be false. As Princess Qin, she couldn't cover the truth with one hand. Moreover, he had specially written a letter to Prince Cheng and asked him to think of a way to save him. Even if there were some accidents, it was not a big deal. His yin yang was not an ordinary maid. She knew martial arts and was specially sent to Infanta Qinghua by him. She was also loyal to him. Even if she messed up his plan now, she would just bear the reputation of impersonating Infanta Qinghua and would not die. Of course, she would not betray him. As for what Xiao Wanru had said before, no one would take it seriously. Xiao Jing thought that he would be fine this time after considering all the possibilities. Unexpectedly, as soon as he entered the door of the Ministry of Justice, he was held down and his hands and feet were immediately chained up. "I am Marquis Xing. How dare you chain me up?" Xiao Jing was furious. After being stunned for a moment, he struggled desperately. His face turned red and his veins stood out. Chapter 12:38. This was the Ministry of Justice. No matter how hard he struggled, it was useless. After the guards of the Ministry of Justice locked him up, they took him into a room on the side. In the room, the Minister of the Ministry of Justice was sitting on the first seat, and the two assistant ministers of the Ministry of Justice were sitting on the other side. When Shichi was also there. This situation was not as simple as just asking a question. "Marquis Xing, what did you do at the border more than a decade ago when your brother died? You said that you had been in the capital city at that time, and someone testified for you." Although the Minister of the Ministry of Justice and the two assistant ministers were sitting in the hall, when Shichi was the chief interrogator. He looked coldly at Xiao Jing's face and asked impolitely. Xiao Jing's heart skipped a beat, and his expression changed slightly. However, he immediately reacted and took a deep breath. His expression changed slightly and he exclaimed, "Lord Wen, what do you mean? I don't understand what you mean. I was indeed in the capital more than 10 years ago, and I have never left the capital." At that time, there were not many people who knew his whereabouts. Except for Yanxi's father, who saw him with his own eyes and talked to him for a while, the others only met once or twice, and they didn't talk to each other. It was impossible for anyone to clearly know that it was him. Before leaving the capital city and after returning to the capital city, he also acted suspiciously, so it was impossible for anyone to know. Yanxi was far away at the border, and he had been on good terms with him and took care of his son. No matter from which aspect, it was impossible for him to tell people what had happened at the border at that time. As for Qin Huaiyong and Qi Ping, they might or might not have seen him at that time. Even if they saw him, it was impossible for them to confirm his identity. Thinking of this, he immediately felt at ease. He looked at the few people in the hall furiously as though he had been wronged. My lords, I have a clear conscience in my actions. How do you all act is the right thing to do? Even if I have done something wrong, the emperor will reprimand me. My lords, how do you all act according to the law? Marquis Xing, do you think that your mistress didn't say anything? When Shichi ignored Xiao Jing's clamor and suddenly sneered. He hit the gavel in his hand, which made Xiao Jing's heart tremble. And Yang? It shouldn't be. Even if An Yang pretended to be an official's wife, she could admit it. It was impossible for other things to be involved. Moreover, An Yang would definitely say that it was arranged by Ru and Great Elder Princess. As for the reason, he didn't know what it had to do with him. Thinking about it, it was just Xiao Wanru's groundless accusations at that time. It was impossible for the Ministry of Justice to punish An Yang based on this groundless accusations. What are you talking about, Your Excellency One? It's not good for me to have an affair, but it's related to my wife. I'm the one who has wronged my wife. The rest has nothing to do with the Ministry of Justice. As for pretending to be an official, it's not a big deal. Do I need to be shackled? Xiao Jinggao raised his head and smiled disdainfully. He raised his hand, and the crisp sound of metal colliding rang out. Wen said. He, Wen said. He of justice, Did he mean that Chu Luchen was fooling around, and they also fooled around? Marquis Xing, the woman said that she was Infanta Qinghua's servant girl and then followed you. Now the pretense was also plotted by you. Why did you collude with my sister-in-law? When Shichi knew that Xiao Jing was not easy to deal with, so he didn't care about what he said. He continued to ask in a cold voice. Colluding with his sister-in-law was not a nice thing to say. Xiao Jing looked a little uncomfortable, but that was all. He continued to boast shamelessly, Sirs, you are all men. If you fancy a woman and take her as your concubine, it's not a big deal, is it? Moreover, Infanta Qinghua had died at that time. She was just an ordinary servant girl in the mansion. I put her outside because I was afraid that my wife would make trouble. It would be bad for everyone and also affect Infanta Qinghua's reputation. Of course, he meant that they were all men, so they should not embarrass him with some things. In a word, a man's moral character was not a big deal compared with a woman's. There were many playboys in the capital city, and many of them had done nothing good. The reason why the matter of Marquis Xing's mansion was so serious was that Xiao Jing had always been a gentleman. At this time, he was shameless and said whatever he wanted to say. He didn't care about his moral character. In a word, it was just that he had a moral character, which was not a big deal. Since Madame of Jiang was dead, no one could do anything to him. Marquis Xing, you sent a servant girl to Infanta Qinghua to spy on Infanta Qinghua and the former heir, right? It was also this woman who told you where the former heir went after leaving the capital city. So you hurriedly chased after him and secretly killed him. Xiao Jing, now that the woman has told you everything, why don't you confess quickly? When Shichi's eyes fell on Xiao Jing's face, and then he said word by word. Xiao Jing's face trembled, and he hurriedly suppressed his panic and said, Your Excellency, why do you say this? You need evidence to speak. I have evidence. Do you want to see it, Marquis Xing? Then let's do it one by one. When Shichi said coldly, picked up a letter at hand, threw it in front of him, and ordered the yamen runner, Show Marquis Xing what's written in this letter. A yamen runner came over, picked up the letter on the ground, took out the letter scoop, opened it, and placed it in front of him. When he saw the words in front of him clearly, Xiao Jing's face turned pale and he was so shocked that he almost couldn't stand. It turned out that it was written by Yan Shi's father, and it was to prove that he was indeed at the border at that time. He saw the date, which was more than 10 years ago, just a few days after the former heir of Duke Xing was killed. This was too unexpected. Xiao Jing had never expected that there would be such a letter. Why did Yan Shi want to deal with him? Did he know that he had dealt with Yan Shi? How could this be possible? It was Wang Xingxue who framed Yan Shi. Later, Wang Xingxue also died, and this matter was left unsettled. Could it be that he was the one who was investigated? Impossible, impossible. I used it very carefully, and only Wang Xingxue knows about it. How could Yen know that I asked Wang Xingxue to do it? Then what's the matter with the letter? Xiao Jing, why did you sneak to the border at that time? When Shichi asked harshly. Lord Wen, I really don't understand what this letter means, and I don't understand why you would want to frame me. Xiao Jing clenched his teeth and refused to say a word. He didn't believe that the testimony of a person with the surname Yen could prove anything. Do you think General Yen is talking nonsense? When Shichi suddenly laughed. Xiao Jing suddenly had a bad feeling, but at this time he could only brace himself and say, I don't understand what Lord Wen means. But, in fact, not only General Yan's letter can testify, but also General Qin and Magistrate Qi. Magistrate Qi is far away in Jiangzhou, but he also wrote a letter. As for Lord Qin, he can testify on the spot at the right time. Qin Huaiyong and Qi Ping? This was impossible. Although he might have been seen by them at that time, they just saw him. At that time, the rear area was in chaos, and it was not a big deal to see one or two familiar people. How could they be sure that it was him? Moreover, did they know him at that time? Xiao Jing didn't believe it. When he went there, he had been prepared, so he recognized Qin Huaiyong and Qi Ping at a glance, but they didn't know him. Was Wen Shichi deceiving him? Thinking of this, he calmed down and raised the corner of his mouth sarcastically. Lord Wen, you must be joking. General Huaiyuan and Magistrate Qi didn't know me at that time, so how could they testify? Even now, Magistrate Qi shouldn't know me, right? Is it because Marquis Xing has such an idea that he is so fearless? When Shichi asked with a smile. He looked very kind, but it made Xiao Jing's heart tremble more than before. The two mansions were neighbors, and they had lived next to each other for so many years. Of course, he knew that Wen Shichi was more talented than less. Did he really control everything at this time? What are you talking about, Lord Wen? I really don't understand. Xiao Jing panicked, but he didn't show it on his face. Instead, he looked calmer and calmer. Looking at the minister and the two assistant ministers sitting on the high seat in silence, he asked, What do you mean? Could it be that he also agreed with Lord Wen? My business is neither big nor small. Milords, are you deliberately making it big for Prince Qin? In order to flatter Prince Qin, he deliberately tortured himself. Does Marquis Xing know that you lost something at the border? When Shichi ignored his provocation and asked with cold eyes. When the evidence was sent to the Ministry of Justice one by one, it shocked the whole Ministry of Justice. Some of the evidence sent by Prince Chen's mansion couldn't be obtained in a day or two, but they were clearly presented. In the face of so much evidence, it was useless for Xiao Jing to deny it. Since the officials of the Ministry of Justice could be so calm and even handcuffed Xiao Jing as soon as they came, they concluded that Xiao Jing couldn't escape this time. It could be said that what Xiao Jing did now was useless. The officials of the Ministry of Justice knew it very well, but at the same time, they were secretly shocked. Prince Qin really couldn't be underestimated. He solved a pending case more than 10 years ago. What happened in Marquis Xing's mansion before was just a small matter. No matter how noisy it was just a small matter. What Prince Chen's mansion was hiding in secret was a big move. Before all the evidence was in hand, Prince Chen's mansion was very calm and quietly watched Marquis Xing's mansion make a big deal every 2 days and then a big deal every 3 days. When the evidence was arranged one by one, they found that the matter was settled. It could be said that when Prince Chen's mansion sent Inyang and all the evidence to the Ministry of Justice, the truth of the matter was already very clear. With one move, Xiao Jing was like a jumping clown at the moment. What evidence do I have? Xiao Jing didn't believe it and asked. When he left the capital city and returned to the capital city, he was very careful, so he couldn't leave anything behind. Marquis Xing doesn't believe it? The minister of the Ministry of Justice suddenly said and looked at Xiao Jing with a faint smile, which made Xiao Jing feel cold and his eyes twitch unconsciously. He felt that he had forgotten something important. Chapter 1239. What? Xiao Jing stammered. www. Orgwen Shichi nodded. A yamen runner came forward, took something down from above, and waved it in front of him. Looking at the jade pendant with a silk ribbon, Xiao Jing didn't know what to say for a moment. It was a seemingly ordinary jade pendant, which was nothing. This jade pendant belongs to Marquis Xing, right? When Shichi asked, Xiao Jing subconsciously wanted to say no, but he saw a small lawn character and a small cluster of orchids at the corner of the jade pendant. He seemed to be frozen. He opened his mouth in astonishment, but couldn't say a word. His mind was blank. Orchids? Lan Yang? The famous prostitute Lan Yang in the brothel? This jade pendant has the name of Lan Yang, a famous prostitute in the capital city. It was originally given to this famous prostitute by you. There is the mark of Marquis Xing's mansion on the back of the jade pendant. It should be specially made by you because you admired this girl at that time. Ningyuan Army General and Magistrate Qi found this jade pendant and guessed that it was you according to the hint on the jade pendant. They haven't seen you, but they have seen the old duke. When Shichi's voice slowly came down from above. It was not light, but it hit Xiao Jing's heart hard, making him dazed for a moment. The memory of that time suddenly came back to him. At that time, he indeed had some private dealings with the famed courtesan named Lan Yang. He was very infatuated with her, and ordered a jade pendant to be given to her. When he left the capital, he also left through Lan Yang's place. Lan Yang gave him a cover, and when he returned to the capital, he also left through Lan Yang's place. After that, he used magic to find a merchant to redeem the famed courtesan, and took her far away. At that time, although he had hidden the fact that he was in contact with this famous courtesan from Jiangshi, there were still a few of his good friends who knew about it. When he went to stay at Lan Yang's place, he deliberately told these friends in private. This was also the reason why he firmly believed that someone had testified against him. He had a relationship with the famous prostitute and even lived in her place, so he naturally had to hide it from Madame Jiang. In order to prevent Madame Jiang from knowing it, it was normal for him not to appear in front of others for a period of time. www.org. But why was this jade pendant here? He remembered that it was given to the prostitute at that time. Why was it left at the border and picked up by Qin Huayong? Because he didn't remember bringing this jade pendant with him, he didn't find it after checking his body. I'm afraid that Marquis Xing didn't expect that the jade pendant was indeed with you at that time. I heard that it was an engagement gift given by Marquis Xing to a famous prostitute. Maybe the famous prostitute deliberately put it on you at that time for fear that you would forget her outside. When Shichi said, a scene suddenly flashed across Xiao Jing's mind. After he had returned to the capital, he had first gone to Lady Lan's place. Lady Lan had asked him if he had anything to give her. He had casually said a few words to her and then left in a hurry, afraid that he would be discovered. At that time, Lady Lan had looked very disappointed. Now that he thought about it, she must have asked him for the jade pendant. After that, he sent her out of the capital and never saw her again. Due to a freak combination of factors, he had lost the jade pendant at the border. Xiao Jing's hands trembled and his face turned pale. I'm afraid that Marquis Xing still doesn't know this. In fact, more than that, your mistress has also confessed. It was she who sent you a letter at that time and asked you to go there. When Shichi increased his force and said, my mother also confessed? My mother actually confessed. If it was just a matter of reputation, it was not a big problem and she would not be tortured. But it was related to something that had happened more than 10 years ago, and under such circumstances, how could he not use torture? Xiao Jing took a step back and sat heavily on the ground. Suddenly he laughed. He had lost. He had really lost. He had thought that his niece had played tricks in the backyard. Even if she had a bad reputation and made a big fuss, so what? He was a man and could ignore these things. Besides, he was an elder. So what if his niece made a big fuss? Now he found that he was wrong. It was clear that his niece deliberately stalled for time and deliberately made him think that it was a trivial matter. She deliberately made him not take action, so that he lost the first opportunity. He thought it was a trivial matter and didn't take it seriously. But after she threw out other evidence, the matter was actually very clear. Her actions were confusing and ruthless, leaving no room for retreat. Needless to say, this must be Prince Chen's trick. At this time, Xiao Jing felt very regretful. If he had known this, he would not have given his niece the opportunity to marry into Prince Chen's mansion. Without Prince Chen's support, no matter how powerful his niece was, it was impossible for her to get so much evidence and make Qin Huaiyong agree to testify. For so many years, Qin Huaiyong had never mentioned it and had always been weak in front of him. But he had sent this evidence to Prince Chen's mansion. Xiao Jing did not think it was a coincidence. When his big brother left with Infanta Qinghua, it was his best opportunity. He secretly planned to take action. Originally, he thought that it was inconvenient for them to take action in the south of the Yangtze River. Unexpectedly, they went to the border area and hid their names. This was a great opportunity. Taking advantage of the chaos, he led the guards to plot against his big brother. Later, when Duke Xing's mansion found out about his big brother, he was already dead. Infanta Qinghua was brought back because of her abnormal mind. No one cared about other things. Even if he knew that his big brother had a daughter left behind, he didn't care. She was just a little girl. When her mother left, she stayed with his big brother and then disappeared. In the chaos of war, even an adult died. How could a little girl survive? It was a small oversight, but in the end, it was a disaster. What? Marquis Xing was arrested. It may be because of the former heir of Duke Xing. Does the former heir of Duke Xing's death have something to do with him? Chu Qing was shocked. There was a girl in pink sitting in the room. If Xiao Wanru were here, she would definitely recognize that the girl in front of her was Mo Chui, who had been in the Yuhui nunnery. When she was in the Yuhui nunnery, Mo Chui was just a poor orphan girl, but now her momentum was different from before. She leisurely fanned herself with a round fan in her hand and lightly powdered her face. Compared with when she was in the Yuhui nunnery, she looked much more beautiful and delicate. The corners of her eyebrows were slightly raised, with a touch of charm. That's what my uncle said. He said that Marquis Xing's mansion was finished and asked your highness to be careful. Mo Chui came here specially for this matter. Why is it so sudden? Didn't you say that his personal morality was at a disadvantage before? Chu Qing said. He was also annoyed that Xiao Jing was involved in the previous matter. Now that Xiao Jing was in trouble, he was afraid that he would be involved again. If he had known this, he would not have allowed Xiao Jie to marry into Commandery Prince Qing's mansion. But in fact, it's not. Prince Chen took action. Mo Chui reminded him. Chu Qing lowered his head and took a deep breath. Do you all think that I'm inferior to him? You have to remind me again and again. Your Highness, of course not. We have to be careful of him. Mo Chui hurriedly explained. Be careful of him. Be careful of him. Don't always tell me to be careful of him. I don't want to hear anything about him. Chu Qing was very annoyed. He stood up and paced around Yuan Xian for a few times before he calmed down. I know. I won't intervene in the affairs of Marquis Xing's mansion. Isn't he related to Prince Cheng's mansion? Just let Prince Cheng's mansion intervene. Speaking of Prince Cheng's mansion, he was also angry now. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that he might have been tricked by Prince Cheng's mansion. Your Highness, it's the best that you can think in this way. Xiao Jie is just a daughter of a concubine. Xiao Jing won't take her seriously. Your Highness, you can have all kinds of beauties in the future. You don't have to care about a little daughter of a concubine. Moreover, anyone who has a relationship with Marquis Xing's mansion will not have a good life. Mo Chui said with a smile and covered her mouth with the round fan. She was in a good mood. Compared with the trouble of Marquis Xing's mansion, she was more willing to hear that Xiao Jie was in trouble. This woman actually pestered Commandery Prince before she married into Commandery Prince Qing's mansion. She was the legal wife of the prince, while Xiao Jie was just a concubine. However, she married into Commandery Prince Qing's mansion before she married. It was all because of Marquis Xing's mansion. If Marquis Xing's mansion was gone, she would torture her in the future. Well, you can go back after visiting my mother. You should be more careful at this time. Although Mo Chui's complacency was hidden, Chu Qing still noticed it. He couldn't help showing a trace of displeasure. Women were always like this. At this time, they still wanted to be jealous. Sure enough, they were not people who could achieve great things. Then I'll go back first. Mo Chui also knew that it was inconvenient to stay at this time, so she stood up and said with a smile. After learning that something happened to Marquis Xing's mansion, she still couldn't calm down. She just felt happy, very happy. Chu Qing waved his hand. After Mo Chiui left, he returned to the chair and sat down again. After thinking for a while, he suddenly relaxed his eyebrows. This might also be an opportunity for him, a chance to push the blame onto Prince Cheng. He was not completely innocent in what had happened before. Since Prince Cheng had been involved, he would let him be more involved. After making up his mind, he picked up the writing brush. After thinking for a while, he immediately started writing. After that, he put down the writing brush, let it dry, put it into the envelope, and asked a servant to send it out. He wanted to burn Prince Cheng's mansion with the trouble of Marquis Xing's mansion. At this time, Prince Cheng also got the news. He got the news of Xiao Jing's letter. Looking at Xiao Jing's letter for help in his hand, Prince Cheng frowned tightly. Although what Xiao Jing wrote in the letter was very ordinary and didn't seem to be a big deal, it would be fine as long as he went to greet Prince Cheng. However, the meaning in the letter made Prince Cheng feel bad. Something happened to Xiao Jing. Prince Cheng handed the letter in his hand to Master Jie Yen. Master Jie Yen took it and read it 3 lines at a time. The more he read, the more serious he looked. When he finished reading, he put the letter on the table and said with a serious face, "Your Highness, you can't go there. I'm afraid that something big will happen." "What do you mean?" Prince Cheng reached out and rubbed his forehead. Nothing went smoothly recently, so he had a headache. Marquis Xing may suffer a great loss. Jie Yen said. He had read Xiao Jing's letter just now. It didn't seem to be a big deal. Even if Xiao Jing himself asked for help, it would be okay, let alone Prince Cheng. However, it was not a good sign that Xiao Jing asked for help from Prince Cheng. Chapter 1240. Remember in 1 second, 800 mail sign /say, net wonderful pop-up window free reading. What should we do? Let's wait and see, Jie Yen said. Don't pull him. Prince Cheng frowned. It happened so suddenly that he didn't know how to deal with it. No. Jie Yen shook his head and said meaningfully, Your Highness should be more careful at this time. Prince Cheng understood the meaning of Jie Yen. After thinking for a while, he nodded and said, I know what to do. It was not only about Xiao Jing, but also about Xiao Yenru. Jie Yen reminded him of this. If there is any news about Xiao Yenru, send her to Prince Zhou's mansion. Prince Cheng had asked Xiao Yenru to contact Prince Zhou in private before. Send it to Prince Zhou's mansion? It's not the right time, is it? Jie Yen thought that no one would take Xiao Yenru in at this time. Let's see how capable she is. Prince Cheng sneered. Originally, he accepted this woman for the sake of Xiao Jing. Although he needed children and had to overcome his psychological barrier to accept this woman, it did not mean that this woman could win his heart. Originally, they had made a deal with each other. Now it was not suitable for them, so it was best to give this troublemaker to Chu Liuzhou. It was not that he did not want to give it to Chu Luiyue. Compared with Chu Luiyue was less likely to be bewitched. As for Chu Luqian, Prince Cheng did not think about it. Chu Liuxin was not dangerous and he did not need it. Since the Empress was grounded, Chu Liuzhou had been in a bad situation. At this time, it was Chu Liuzhou who needed help the most. Moreover, Chu Liuzhou had indeed coveted Xiao Yenru's beauty before. At this time, who else could she give it to but him? Hearing Prince Cheng's words, Jie Yen understood and said, I understand. Are you going back to your mansion now? Go back to Prince Cheng's mansion. It's the same plan as before. Prince Cheng nodded, straightened his sleeves and strode out. His brother had repeatedly asked him to go down the mountain and go back to Prince Cheng's mansion. If he continued to refuse, his brother would not have a good time. Especially at this time, he should be more upright. If he continued to stay here, he would definitely be suspected. The news that Marquis Xing was taken away by the Ministry of Justice also spread to Prince Yu's mansion and Prince Zhou's mansion that night. The news that Xiao Jing's mistress was found to be an official's relative had been spread throughout the capital city. The two mansions didn't care that Xiao Jing was taken away by the Ministry of Justice again. It was not a big deal, but Xiao Jing's character was really ruined. When no one thought it was a big matter, The atmosphere in Prime Minister Wen's residence was not good. When Shichi hadn't gone back yet. He had gone to the Ministry of Justice today and hadn't returned to the mansion yet. However, Prime Minister Wen returned to the mansion at nightfall. After returning to the mansion, he went directly to Madame Wen's yard. After driving the servants out, he said something to Madame Wen and went directly to the study in the front yard. The Prime Minister's wife sat under the lamp, her face alternating between green and white. The Prime Minister's words rang in her ears, "Someone, invite Biao young lady over." An old maid answered and left. After a while, she came over with Gu Shishu. Gu Shishu didn't have a good time either. After coming back from Marquis Xing's mansion, she was slapped twice by Madame Wen and then driven away. She deliberately wanted to go to the front yard to stop second cousin, but was stopped by the servant girl. At the gate of the yard, there was an old maid sent by Madame Wen guarding and preventing her from going out. At this time, hearing Madame Wen summon, she hurriedly packed up and rushed over. It was already night and the lamp was lit. Gu Shishu looked a little timid under the lamp. She rarely came to Madame Wen's place at this time. In contrast, Madame Wen, who was under the lamp, looked a little cold. Her eyes fell on Gu Shishu coldly. Seeing her come up and salute, she accepted her salute without moving and then said nothing. Gu Shishu bowed sideways slightly. She didn't hear Madame of the Prime Minister's voice for a long time. She couldn't help but feel weak and fell to the ground. The servant girl beside her wanted to help her up, but when she saw Madame of the Prime Minister's face, she showed timidity and quietly retreated into the shadows. "Aunt!" Gu Shishu fell to the ground, raised her head, and looked at Madame Wen with tears in her eyes, looking extremely aggrieved. Madame Wen lowered her head to look at Gu Shishu with cold disappointment in her eyes. "Do you want to kill me so much? For so many years I raised you up, and you are more like a daughter than a daughter. Is this how you repay me?" Madame Wen said, "Aunt, I don't know what you are talking about. I am Shishu who was raised by you. Why do you think of me like this?" Gu Shishu cried. Under the lamp, she looked really pitiful. Tears fell down one by one, and she looked extremely miserable. "Whether you are sincere or not, your fate with our mansion is over. Pack up and go back to your home tomorrow. Don't come back from now on." Madame Wen didn't want to be entangled with her anymore, so she coldly asked her to leave. "But, Aunt, what happened? Why do you treat me like this? How can I leave you? You raised me up, and I haven't repaid you for that." Gu Shishu hurriedly took 2 steps on her knees, hugged the legs of the Madam of the Prime Minister, and cried louder and louder. She didn't leave. How could she leave? She wanted to marry third cousin. She must marry third cousin. As soon as Madame Wen's leg moved, 2 old maids came over and pulled Gu Shishu's hand, which was hugging tightly. "Auntie, I really didn't know. I really didn't know that this Yang was a liar. I thought she was real, so I brought her to you. Auntie, please forgive me. I really didn't know anything." Gu Shishu struggled violently and cried at the same time. The makeup on her face had long been ruined. Her originally beautiful face looked messy and ugly. The 2 old maids pulled her aside and stopped. Madame Wen sneered and said, "Was it really an accident that I met Yang that day? If you hadn't proposed it, would I have gone there? If I hadn't gone there, I wouldn't have met Yang, would I? And I wouldn't have accidentally fallen and almost lost my life. There was no one else around, and my legs were not so old that I was in my 70s or 80s. I was also very careful when walking on the steps. I saw that there were no ice or stones blocking the way before, but in the end, I stepped on a stone and fell inexplicably. I almost lost my life. What's more, I met Yang, who knows martial arts, and she became my savior. Then I followed your advice and took her to introduce her to others. This time, I also went to Marquis Xing's mansion to support her. Aunt, what are you talking about? Why can't I understand? It's my fault. I took you out to enjoy the scenery and didn't take good care of you. Aunt, you can punish me in any way you want, but you can't say that I have bad intentions towards you. After so many years, don't you know me? How could I harm you? What benefits can I get?" Gu Shishu was so aggrieved that she couldn't speak. She sobbed and defended loudly, but she didn't dare to pounce on Madame Wen's leg again. She cried so sadly that she didn't care about her image. She cried and fell to the ground, looking very sad. "Aunt, if you don't believe me, I'm willing to die. As long as you believe me, I'm willing to do anything. Aunt, you have been very kind to me for so many years, and I also treat you like my biological mother. If you doubt me so much, I really can't live on." As Gu Shishu said, she stumbled to her feet, as if she was really going to hit the wall to show her determination. The servant girls and old maids hurried forward to stop her, and Gu Shishu fell to the ground again, crying. Looking at Gu Shishu's determination, Madame Wen hesitated again. Could it be that this matter really had nothing to do with her? Was it really the woman named Anyang who plotted against her? After all, Gu Shishu was the child she had raised. Madame Wen's hard face softened a little, and her expression was no longer cold. "Auntie, please let me die. If I die, I'll go to heaven and bless you with a long life. I won't hate you. I only ask that after I die, Auntie, let me be buried here, and I'll always be with Auntie. My parents have been far away from me since I was a child. Having parents is like having no parents. Except you, who else will pity me?" As soon as Gu Shishu saw Madame Wen's expression, she knew that Madame Wen's heart had softened. She immediately cried more fearfully, as if she had been abandoned. She looked at Madame Wen's tearful confession. Seeing her cry like this and her words were sincere, Madame Wen's heart couldn't be cold anymore. "Okay, get up. Aunt, you forgive me?" Gu Shishu was very excited. "Get up first," Madame Wen said. "If you are not willing to forgive me, I will kneel here until I die," Gu Shishu said stubbornly, looking at Madame Wen's pitiful eyes. Looking at Gu Shishu like this, Madame Wen's thought of her obedient appearance when she was a child. At that time, her daughter had just passed away. Such a young child stayed by her bed. Seeing her wake up, she was also so pitiful. She even asked someone to send a medicine bowl over and insisted on testing the medicine for her. "Get up." Madame of the Prime Minister sighed. She really couldn't be cold to Gu Shishu. She raised Gu Shishu as her daughter. Seeing Gu Shishu, she always thought of her daughter. If Gu Shishu was still alive, would she be like this? Madame of the Prime Minister's heart immediately softened. How could the child raised by her have such a bad heart? What's more, Gu Shishu also said that if Gu Shishu harmed her, it would not be good for her. "Mother, just let her kneel here." A cold voice came from the door of the room. When Shichi, dressed in a black brocade robe, stood at the door with cold and sharp eyes. You're back." Madame Wen looked up and saw Wen Shichi. She said, "Why are you so late today? Come back to rest first." "Third cousin," Gu Shishu said timidly, looking more and more delicate. She looked at Wen Shichi pitifully and expectantly, hoping that Wen Shichi could give her a hand when he entered the door. Wen Shichi ignored her and walked straight past her. He stepped on her fluttering skirt and walked past her as if he didn't see her. Gu Shishu was shocked and looked at Wen Shichi's back in a panic. Even if Wen Shichi ignored her in the past, he had never ignored her like this. He even stepped on the hem of her skirt indifferently and left a footprint on her snow-white clothes. Was he still the elegant and noble third cousin? Was he so rude and rude? Chapter 1241. Mother, do you know when my sister died? Wen Shichi was smiling, but his smile made Gu Shishu tremble with a pale face and tremble all over. It was a secret she could never tell, and it was also the reason why she had been helping Xiao Yanru before. No matter what Xiao Yanru asked her to do, she would do it because of this secret. Obviously, Madame of the Prime Minister also felt the cold atmosphere. She looked at Wen Shichi and then at Gu Shishu, who was pale and trembling. Her face changed dramatically and she asked, What happened? The panic and fear in the atmosphere seemed to be contagious and spread from Gu Shishu to Madame of the Prime Minister. Mother, my sister was pushed into the river and drowned by her because she wanted to get your favor. The woman you have doted on for so many years is simply a poisonous snake. It's in vain that you still listen to her. Wen Shichi raised the corner of his mouth and felt distressed. In fact, not only Madame of the Prime Minister, But he also felt the same way. He had always treated Gu Shishu as his little sister and loved her. Even if she had done something wrong, he still felt that she should not be like this, so he had spared her again and again. There was a kind of explosive pain in his heart. In that dream, his mother and Gu Shishu had forced him to do this. If he had directly punished Gu Shishu after guessing that Gu Shishu and his second brother had harmed him, there would have been no such thing. He felt guilty to her. The guilt came from the dream to the reality. In fact, it was not just a dream. He knew, but that was even more painful. He would rather this was a dream, a nightmare. When he woke up from the nightmare, she would still be the gentle and beautiful woman she was now. She would no longer be the miserable and helpless person in the dream. A trace of blood appeared in his clear eyes. I went to the Ministry of Justice to interrogate this matter today. The girl named Nyang confessed that she and Gu Shishu plotted against you together. Of course, they wanted you to bring Nyang to the public. In this way, the mistress outside Marquis Xing's mansion will have your support. As for why she did this, of course, it was because someone had something on her. She killed her sister, and Xiao Yinru was watching helplessly at that time. When Shichi said gloomily, Madame Wen's body swayed. She had to support herself on the table to prevent herself from falling. Is this true? Mother, if you don't believe me, you can keep her here. Let's see who she will hurt next. When Shichi raised the corners of his mouth coldly and lowered his eyes to hide his bloodshot eyes. He hated her. He hated how powerless he was in the dream and hated how he could only look on helplessly. This is impossible. This is impossible. There was too much information. Madam of the Prime Minister couldn't believe it. She looked at Gu Shishu in a daze. She couldn't believe that the woman she loved with all her heart was the murderer of her daughter. The matter of her youngest daughter was an eternal pain in her heart. She couldn't believe it. Third cousin? Third cousin? What are you talking about? I don't know. I don't know. You don't talk nonsense. Gu Shishu sat on the ground in a panic and kept retreating. At this time, she had no time to care that her dress was dirty and her lips were pale. She looked into Wenshichi's eyes and saw the killing intent in his eyes. Third cousin wants to kill me. Third cousin actually wants to kill me? This realization made her so flustered that she just wanted to escape. With this thought in mind, she immediately did so. She retreated to the threshold and pulled on the door frame. Holding onto the door frame, she stood up and ran. She only had one thought in her mind. She wanted to escape. She wanted to leave this place. Suddenly, she ran into a person at the door. Seeing that it was second cousin Wenxian, Gu Shishu immediately pulled him and cried, second cousin, help me. Third cousin framed me. Gu Shishu cried so much that she couldn't even speak because she was choked with sobs. Wenxian had always liked Gu Shishu and was infatuated with her. Seeing that his beloved was crying like this, he could not help but breathe a little heavily. He did not know what had happened today, but he heard that Gu Shishu had been slapped by his mother. Just now, he heard that Gu Shishu had been brought to his mother. After returning to the mansion, he hurried over to see the situation. He didn't expect to see Gu Shishu running out in a panic as soon as he entered the door. Seeing him crying like this, he got angry for a moment. He remembered what Gu Shishu had said in the past. She said that her younger brother had always been interested in her. Even though his mother had arranged a cousin for him, his third brother was still worried and still pulled his cousin. Sometimes, he even took his cousin to a place where there was no one. His cousin said that she was so sad that she wanted to die, but she couldn't bear to do that when she thought of him. In the past, there were many things Gu Shishu had said. She said that the reason why her mother didn't explicitly marry her and her cousin was also because of her third brother's obstruction. She hated him for stealing his wife. Wenxian couldn't bear it anymore. He patted Gu Shishu's hand, strode in, and slapped Wenshichi, who was standing at the door, hard. You bastard, she's your second sister-in-law. Wenshichi grabbed Wenxian's angry hand. The expressionless Wenshichi raised his blood-red eyes and slapped Wenxian hard. Wenxian didn't expect that Wenshichi would hit him, so he took a step back. Wenshichi took a step forward and kicked Wenxian's leg hard. Wenxian fell backward and hit Gu Shishu. The two of them fell heavily together. Guards came over from both sides and suppressed Wen Xian. Wen Xian, you treat a poisonous snake who killed your little sister as a treasure. You even hurt your own flesh and blood. When Shichi walked out of the room and kicked Wen Xian's heart with a ruthless look in his eyes. In the dream, he was hurt by Wen Xian and Gu Shishu. Everything was done by Wen Xian and Gu Shishu. It was his tragedy and hers. If it weren't for these two people, could everything be better and start all over again? Then he should kill them. At this moment, the killing intent clearly appeared in Wen Shichi's mind. Even Wen Shichi was very tempted. He lifted his foot and was about to kick Wen Xian's heart again. This time, he was going to kill Wen Xian. Since Wen Xian was not related by blood and listened to a woman's one-sided words, there was no need for Wen Shichi to care. Shichi! A rebuke came from the side. Wen Xiang hurried over and saw the scene in front of him. He was very anxious. Wen Shichi's third son was elegant, but at this moment, there was a ruthless look in his eyes, as if he had changed into another person. His blood-red eyes were obviously murderous. Sitting paralyzed on the ground, his second son shivered and didn't look like his usual self at all. Wen Shichi slowly withdrew his foot and landed on the ground where Wen Xian had pressed his foot down. Then he stomped hard on it. Ah! Wen Xian screamed and pushed Wen Shichi's foot hard in pain. Shichi, what are you doing? Wen Xiang was furious and shouted sternly. Wen Shichi slowly loosened his foot and took a step back. He curled the corners of his mouth and the murderous look in his eyes disappeared for a moment. After taking a step back, he said coldly, "Father, ask your good son. He just said that I hooked up with Gu Shishu, the poisonous snake, and that I took a fancy to her. It seems that he still wants to kill me secretly. Since he is ruthless, why should I treat him as my second brother? What nonsense are you talking about?" Wen Xiang was angry and resentful at the fight between his two sons. Although he scolded Wen Shichi, he glared at his second son fiercely. Compared with his second son, his youngest son was his most capable son and also his future hope. "Father, I found out that my little sister was killed by Gu Shishu. Xiao Yanru watched Gu Shishu kill my little sister and then threatened her to do something for Marquis Xing's mansion. This time, the affair between the mistress of Marquis Xing's mansion and the mistress of Marquis Xing plotted against my mother and almost killed her." When Shichi raised the corners of his mouth coldly and said concisely, "Is what you said true?" Wen Xiang looked at Gu Shishu, who was behind Wen Xian, in shock. He didn't care about the affairs of the mansion in the past, but he treated Gu Shishu very well. He only had 3 sons. Seeing such a delicate and lovely girl who grew up beside him, he couldn't help thinking of his daughter when he looked at her. "Father, do you also feel soft-hearted? Do you think that because my sister thinks highly of her?" When Shichi said coldly, "Because of this, she killed my innocent sister. My sister was killed by her, but she enjoyed everything that belonged to my sister with a peace of mind." "Father, you can't listen to third brother's nonsense." When Xian panicked. Ignoring the pain in his hand, he tried to protect Gu Shishu and said loudly, "No, it's impossible. Father, what third brother said is false. His love turned into hatred. He wants cousin sister, but she ignores him. He will talk nonsense. Father, you can't listen to third brother's nonsense." Gu Shimei hid behind Wen Xian in a panic and pulled his clothes as if holding the last life-saving straw. She shook her head hard and said, "I didn't do it. I didn't do it. It's really not me. I don't know anything. Third cousin, I really don't know anything." She cried so ungracefully that she couldn't pretend to be innocent and felt wronged. "Everyone in the mansion knows that she's restless. While she's seducing you, she's also thinking about someone else. Wen Xian, how stupid do you have to be to believe this vicious woman's words? However, you're not a good person to begin with. You've done a lot of things in private. You've prepared everything you need to harm me." When Shichi said coldly and waved his hand. Immediately, a guard came over and sent some things to Prime Minister Wen. At the same time, there was a letter. Prime Minister Wen hesitated as he read the letter. When he finished reading, his expression changed greatly. This was a letter from Wen Xian asking for a highly toxic item from the Su Kingdom. Coincidentally, this letter was written to one of the envoys from the Su Kingdom. Furthermore, it was written to one of the envoys from the Sioux kingdom. The envoys wanted his third brother to fall ill and die slowly after taking the poison. They didn't want him to die immediately. Prime Minister Wen could see Wen Xian's handwriting clearly even if it was not stamped. Moreover, there was some other evidence, so he threw it in front of Prime Minister Wen. Wen Xian's face changed dramatically. This time he really panicked and said, "Father, it's not like this." "Father." Prime Minister Wen threw away the letter in his hand and went forward to slap Wen Xian fiercely twice in the face. The slap made the corner of Wen Xian's mouth bleed immediately. He said, "You heartless bastard. Someone, throw this beast into the woodshed." Chapter 1242. Remember in 1 second, 800 mail sign /say, net wonderful pop-up window free reading. "Father, Father." Wen Xian still wanted to say something, but he was dragged away by 2 guards. Prime Minister Wen's gaze fell on Gu Shishu behind him. Of course, he believed Wen Shiqi's words. The Ministry of Justice was not something that anyone could fabricate. Moreover, the matter of Anyang originally had nothing to do with Prime Minister Wen's mansion, but it got involved because of Gu Shishu. If there was no other reason, it would not have happened. It was not only because of the Ministry of Justice, but also some small details at that time. After his daughter had an accident, Prime Minister Wen had also suspected Gu Shishu. Her behavior and timing at that time were also very suspicious. But later he thought that she was just a child, so it could not be her fault. Maybe it was really his daughter's carelessness. After that, Gu Shishu had been serving Madame carefully as if she was her own daughter, so Wen Xiang didn't care about her anymore. Now that he thought about it, it was all clues. Sure enough, he was wrong. After so many years, he actually couldn't see through this woman's heart. He was old, but he couldn't see as clearly as his son. In the beginning, Madame wanted to give Gu Shishu to her third son. Fortunately, her third son had always been unwilling. Otherwise, as a biased old wife, she would really do so. Her originally tall and straight body could not help but bend, and she looked a little older. Wen Shiqi stepped aside. Prime Minister Wen sighed and said, "Come in." Wen Shiqi followed behind him. Uncle, those are all fake. Uncle, I want to go home, I want to go home." Gu Shishu's desperate voice came from behind. However, this voice now fell into everyone's ears and was filled with deep disgust. "Someone, send Lady Biao back." Minister Wen stopped talking and ordered. "Yes, sir," someone answered and moved out of the way. Gu Shishu looked around in disbelief. She just cried subconsciously, but she didn't expect that it would have such an effect. She immediately crawled up and ran out in a hurry. She wanted to go home. She wanted to go home. She wanted to go home. She wanted to go back to her own home. With her parents' protection, her uncle would definitely not do anything to her. She just didn't admit it. Her cousin had been dead for so many years. It was impossible to drag her out of the ground and ask her. Yes, she just didn't admit it. She would never admit it. After a period of time, when her uncle and aunt were not so angry, she would come back to coax her aunt. Aunt was very easy to coax. If she could be coaxed well, she could also marry into their family. This time, she didn't dare to think about third cousin anymore. Marrying second cousin was also a good thing. At least second cousin could kill third cousin for her. After killing third cousin, most of the people in the Prime Minister's residence would fall into her hands. In the future, except for eldest cousin, this result was not bad, Gu Shishu thought crazily while running out in a hurry. After taking a few steps, she was suddenly lifted up by someone. It was a guard. It was actually a guard. Gu Shishu wanted to curse, but her mouth was blocked by a piece of cloth. She wanted to struggle desperately, but her hands were pressed behind her back and she was carried forward by the guards. The road became more and more deviated, and then they came to a water surface. Looking at this familiar scene, Gu Shishu struggled even more. How could she not be familiar with this place? This was the place where she pushed her cousin down, and it was also the place where she dared not come alone in the future. Even if she had to come here, she had to bring a lot of people with her. She didn't even dare to look at it more than once. Others only thought that she remembered the matter of Miss One of Prime Minister Wen's mansion. Only she knew that she didn't dare to. She was afraid that when Xian would climb out of it. She got up, looked for her, and pulled her down. Her body was thrown into the water heavily. Gu Shishu struggled desperately. At this moment, her mind suddenly became clear. How could she think that her uncle would be kind enough to let her go back? How could she think that Wen's mansion would let her go back after she killed her cousin? They wanted her life. They wanted her life to pay for her cousin's life, but she didn't want to die. She didn't want to die. She tried her best to struggle to the shore, but before she could reach the shore, she was pushed away by a bamboo pole. She struggled again, and her mind gradually became cloudy. Suddenly, she saw herself in a red dress married to Wen Xian, and another beautiful and elegant figure married to Wen Shiqi. That woman was Wen Shiqi's favorite. Even if she just looked at him from a distance, she could feel the tenderness of her third cousin, which she had never seen before. How could he treat her so well? That woman had lost her reputation and entered the mansion for marriage. How could she win third cousin's love? She was jealous, she hated, and she wanted her to die a horrible death. Since she couldn't get third cousin, she would destroy him. So would that woman. She would also destroy her. This was her own idea, as well as Xiao Yanru's. The two of them hit it off, and it was a good idea. They would make that woman die without a burial place. The memory in his mind stopped at the figure of that woman. It was a little familiar. It was really familiar. It seemed to be Princess Qin. Wen Shiqi knew very well that his father would never let Gu Shishu go. In fact, even if his father let Gu Shishu go, he would never let Gu Shishu leave the Deputy Prime Minister's mansion alive. He hated himself for not discovering this woman's true colors earlier and for not killing her ruthlessly. If her life could make up for all these, Gu Shishu should have died 10,000 times. Mrs. Wen, who was still sitting in the chair with her legs still weak, trembled. There was too much information in Wen Shiqi's words just now, so she couldn't react for a moment. Hearing the sound of the door and seeing Prime Minister Wen come in with his hands behind his back, her eyes turned red. Prime Minister, how could you treat such a vicious plaything as a treasure? Prime Minister Wen said angrily. Prime Minister, Mrs. Wen shed tears and turned to Wen Shiqi. Seeing that Wen Shiqi lowered his head and ignored her, she became even more sad and cried, Prime Minister, I didn't know that she would be so vicious. How could she be so vicious? How could she hurt my Mother, I'm afraid you've made a mistake. Not only my sister, but also me. Gu Shishu has already picked second brother to do something to me. Father has checked just now. It should be a while later. If Gu Shishu hadn't been picked out today, second brother might have succeeded. Wen Shiqi raised his eyes and said coldly, since mother likes second brother and Gu Shishu, you might as well follow second brother and Gu Shishu in the future. His words were extremely cold and even heart-wrenching. Mrs. Wen felt so distressed that she covered her chest hard and almost couldn't breathe. Bastard, what are you talking about? She's your mother, and your mother was also deceived. Prime Minister Wen was furious and reprimanded his son. His son was not in a good state today, but he still refused to rest at this time, which made him a little angry. Mother was deceived, so you can say that she is completely right? If mother hadn't indulged Gu Shishu again and again, would Gu Shishu have come up with the idea to hurt my sister and me? All of it. Is mother really innocent? Wen Shiqi said with hatred. If the person in front of him was not his mother, he would actually be more willing to destroy her. The anger that constantly rushed out of his heart almost burned his head. For a moment, he couldn't tell whether what was in front of him was real or a dream. It was so heavy that it almost pressed on his heart. There was no part of him that didn't hurt. Bastard! Prime Minister Wen was so angry that he slammed the table so hard that the teacups on the table shook a few times. How could his son, who had always been elegant, be so angry? His hatred was almost directed at his mother. Prime Minister Wen's wife was so frightened that she even cried a lot less. She tightly pulled Prime Minister Wen's sleeves and looked extremely frightened. The youngest son was also the most elegant son. No matter in front of others or behind others, he had always been as gentle as jade. How could he have so much hatred and anger? At that moment he seemed to hate everyone. Prime Minister Wen's wife was inexplicably flustered and didn't dare to ask about her second son. When Shichi closed his eyes and calmed down for a while. Then he slowly opened his eyes, took 2 steps back, and bowed to Prime Minister Wen and his wife. Father, mother, I'm tired. I'll go back first. After that, he turned around and left without waiting for them to say anything. The blood in his eyes flowed for a while. He was afraid that if he didn't leave, he would lose control of his anger again. Some hatred accumulated and became an uncontrollable factor. It was not that he didn't care about it, but he just suppressed it. He thought that he could suppress all the feelings, but in fact, this feeling had never left. What a bastard! Prime Minister Wen was so angry that his face turned livid when he saw him leave. His son had always been the most agreeable to him, but now he disobeyed him so much. Xian, what's wrong with Xian? Prime Minister Wen's wife finally dared to ask about her second son and asked anxiously. Send Xian out. Prime Minister Wen pulled himself together. What? Prime Minister Wen's wife stared at Prime Minister Wen anxiously. Her face was as pale as snow, and she couldn't sit still. Send him back to his hometown. Someone needs to watch over his hometown. He is neither good at literature nor martial arts, so it's not good for him to stay in the capital. Moreover, he wanted to harm Shichi. Prime Minister Wen paused here. He didn't want to do this. Sending his second son back to his hometown was equivalent to sending him away. He wouldn't be able to see him in the future. Although his second son was disappointing, he was still his son after all. Thinking of his third son's hatred just now, Prime Minister Wen had to do this. He clearly knew that it was impossible for his second and third son to reconcile. His third son, who was never angry, had a murderous look on his face just now. He wanted to kill his second son. With his second son's level, he was no match for him at all. The best way was to keep him away. To keep him away from his third son, in case he really caused some big trouble. He could only give up this second son and pretend that he had never had this second son. Prime Minister Wen had already made up his mind. After saying that, he didn't leave any room. He must go. A bastard who wants to harm his brother will be a scourge if he stays in the capital. After saying that, he took 2 heavy breaths. He didn't want to hear Prime Minister Wen's wife crying anymore, so he turned around and left. Prime Minister Xian. Xian. Prime Minister Wen's wife anxiously wanted to hold Prime Minister Wen's hand, but Prime Minister Wen had already flung his sleeves and left. He had already made up his mind to leave. For a moment, her eyes rolled back and she fainted. Chapter 1243. The collapse of Marquis Xing's mansion happened almost overnight. No one expected that Xiao Jing, Marquis Xing, had stolen the title from his elder brother. He had killed his elder brother and sister-in-law, and had been conspiring with Madame Jiang to plot against his niece and nephew. Such a thing was simply appalling. A lot of things had happened in Marquis Xing's mansion, and its reputation had been ruined. Now that Xiao Jing was brought to the Ministry of Justice, many people didn't take it seriously. No one expected that a daughter from another family could cause such a big thing and dig out a thing that had been buried for many years. The whole capital city was in an uproar, and the emperor was furious. Xiao Jing was so vicious that it made people's hair stand on end. He didn't need to wait for the execution after autumn. He would directly execute Xiao Jing at the entrance of Kaishiku 3 days later. The second branch of Marquis Xing's mansion was driven out of Marquis Xing's mansion, and the title was taken away and fell on Xiao Yuanhao, who was still young. Xiao Yuanhao became the youngest Marquis Xing, and the second branch was driven out of Marquis Xing's mansion. The third branch had originally separated from the family, and the genealogy had been fixed, so this matter was not involved. With Prince Chen's plea, the third branch was spared and left Marquis Xing's mansion in a hurry and quietly. Old Madam didn't know about this. She was now in bed due to a stroke and couldn't move, and no one told her about it. Nanny Yu still served Old Madam and strictly ordered others to tell Old Madam about it. Old Madam was not in a clear state of mind. No one cared about her. It was her own fault that she had fallen into such a situation. Xiao Wanru asked Nanny Yu to continue to support old madam and removed some unnecessary servant girls and old maids. Old madam's courtyard was also empty. With 2 servant girls, Xiao Wanru came to Xiao Jing's courtyard again. This courtyard should have been here last night, but Chu Luchen was called into the Imperial Palace yesterday. When he came back in the middle of the night, he told her that Xiao Jing's matter had been settled and asked her to have a good rest. She could come to check it by herself today. After the door was unlocked, Xiao Wanru went up with Yu Jie and Qin. The stairs looked very old, and everything here was different from the courtyard outside. Although some parts of the courtyard outside had also been damaged, they had all been repaired. Only here, there were still traces of damage as if no one had ever repaired it. Climbing up the stairs, he slowly walked around the top. It was actually quite big and was divided into 2 rooms. The outer room had some sundries by the window, but there weren't many of them. On the other side, there was a couch. Princess, someone has slept on this bed recently. Her stepped forward and checked carefully, then said, "Look, there are fallen hairs here." She picked up a strand of hair. It was half gray and half white, and it looked like it had fallen from an old person. If it was a very long time ago, then there would be dust on this hair. But now, there's nothing at all. Her placed her hair on a pure white silk handkerchief and pressed down on the ends of her hair as she spoke. There was no dust on the handkerchief, so it could be seen clearly. Xiao Wanru nodded, turned her watery eyes slightly, and fell on the door curtain of the inner room. There was a coarse door curtain hanging there, which looked very ordinary. Although it looked a little old, it was not an old thing from more than a decade ago. Walking closer, Yu Jie stepped forward and lifted the curtain. There was no door behind the curtain, and there was no door panel on the door frame. Only the curtain separated the inner room from the outer room. There was a very wide bed in the inner room. Walking to the bed, Xiao Wanru took a deep breath and lifted the curtain. She lifted up the curtain, but there was nothing behind it. There was nothing at all. Qin stepped forward. After a careful examination, she reported, "Someone has been living here recently. If the house had been deserted for a long time, there should be some moldy air. But when I came in, it seemed that this house had always been occupied." As she spoke, she touched the side of the pillow and took out a handkerchief. It was a very simple handkerchief, but it was very new. At first glance, one could tell that it was something recently. "Princess, there was someone living here. Just like the couch outside, there was someone living here. It should have been a few days ago, but now it is not here," Qing'er said. She was very professional in this kind of thing, which was also the reason why Xiao Wanru specially brought her here. A secret guard had always been easy to find clues. Xiao Wanru nodded and stepped forward. She walked to the window by the bed and reached out to push the window. The window was closed tightly. Even if she tried her best, she could only push a small gap. Yu Jie stepped forward to help her and pushed the window a little. Looking out of the window, she could not see much. "Does it seem that someone is locked up here?" Xiao Wanru asked in a hoarse voice. "It's a little like that, but who does Xiao Jing want to lock up? Who did he lock up? Is the mistress kept outside?" Qin asked in confusion. It was not that Xiao Jing could not lock up people. As Marquis Xing, it was not a big deal for him to lock up a few people. But the problem was that he locked them up here, which meant that he could keep an eye on them. "Is it a mistress?" Yu Jie looked at a dressing table on the side and said. Xiao Wanru's eyes also fell on the dressing table. Although it was a simple dressing table with only a bronze mirror on the table, it could still be seen that it was a dressing table. She opened the drawer, but there was nothing. Even if there was a hairpin before, it had been inserted into her hair and taken away. Pulling out the stool, Xiao Wanru sat in front of the dressing table and reached out to wipe the dressing table. There was dust at the corner. It could be seen that the dressing table was not valued. It was just casually cleaned. It could not be Xiao Jing's mistress. She was not his mistress, but a woman was locked up here. Moreover, there was Dr. Chio's fake death medicine here. Xiao Wanru's identity was obvious. She reached out to press her chest and suppressed the shock in her heart. She thought of the overly stout old maid who had come here at that time. Such a stout old maid must be strong. What kind of woman would need such an old maid? He lowered his head slightly and took a deep breath. He suddenly felt like he couldn't catch his breath. Was that the person she had identified? Go and find out who the stout old maid is, Xiao Wanru said. Yu Jie answered and ran downstairs. Xiao Wanru stood up, walked around inside, and went downstairs. The old maid in charge had been called over. At present, it was the first branch who was in charge of the mansion, so everyone knew that. Seeing Xiao Wanru coming down, they became more respectful. Xiao Wanru sat down on the chair in the middle and looked at the old maid in charge. She looked smart and asked directly, "Last time I saw a very strong old maid here, but she was not an inferior one. Who is she and where is she now?" "Are you asking about Nanny Xiao, Your Highness?" The old maid in charge knew who she was asking about and hurriedly said in a flattering tone, "Nanny Xiao left the night before yesterday." "The night before yesterday?" Xiao Wanru's face changed slightly. At that time, Nanny Xiao was going to be recorded in the family tree the next day. "Was it very late?" "Yes, it was very late. I heard that something happened to Nanny Xiao's family, so Master Ho allowed her to leave. I didn't see her when she left, and I heard Master Ho mention it casually the next day." The nanny in charge said. "Where is Nanny Xiao from? What did she do before?" Xiao Wanru asked again. "I really don't know," the nanny in charge said with a wry smile. "What's going on?" Xiao Wanru looked up with cold eyes. In fact, Nanny Xiao followed Master Ho, second Master Ho, for a long time. She was alone and there was no one else at home. Later, she lived outside and seldom returned to the mansion. She could only see her for a few days a year. After returning to the mansion, she just stayed in this courtyard and basically never went out. This time she came back much older, so she lived here. Master Ho asked her to clean up the things in the attic while living here, so that she wouldn't have to find another place. The nanny in charge said. In fact, she didn't know much about Nanny Xiao. Most of it was told by others. Nanny Xiao seemed to be strong and usually ignored others. If someone offended her, she would complain to Master Ho. No one else in the courtyard dared to provoke her. Is there anything special about her? Xiao Wanru took a deep breath and there was a fishy taste in her throat. In fact, there is nothing special about her, but she seldom goes out of the attic. Master Ho doesn't allow others to go up there and only allows her to go up there. It can be seen that she is Master Ho's henchman. Everyone says that there are some family treasures of Marquis Xing's mansion in the attic. Nanny Xiao specially arranges these treasures. She eats and uses good food and is almost the same as masters. The nanny in charge thought for a while and answered. "Can you find this person?" Xiao Wanru asked. "I may not be able to find her," the nanny in charge said in embarrassment. Xiao Wanru narrowed her watery eyes, fluttered her long eyelashes twice, and waved her hand. The nanny in charge didn't dare to stay and left obediently. It became quiet in the room. Only Xiao Wanru's heavy breathing made her chest uncomfortable. It took her a lot of effort to adjust her breathing. She stood up and told the two maids, "Go back to the mansion." After returning to the mansion, Xiao Wanru went directly to Chu Liuchen's study. Xiao Xuanzi saw Xiao Wanru coming in the study and smiled like a flower again. He immediately went up to report and then asked Xiao Wanru to go up. Xiao Wanru left the two maids downstairs, followed Xiao Xuanzi to the second floor alone, and finally went to the third floor. In the study on the third floor, Chu Liuchen sat on a large chair, looked at Xiao Wanru with a smile, and waved to her. Xiao Wanru bit her lip and walked over. "What's wrong? Did something happen?" When she got close, Chu Liuchen pulled her over. His handsome eyes glanced at Xiao Wanru's slightly pale lips, and there was a doting look in his eyes. "Will you believe what I said?" Xiao Wanru looked at Chu Liuchen in a daze, and her eyes turned red inexplicably. Along the way, only in front of Chu Liuchen did she feel that she was weak and needed someone to protect her. "I believe you," Chu Liuchen said softly and made room for her to sit down on a large chair. "Tell me, what do you need me to do?" Divine Emperor of the Nine Heavens. Chapter 1244. Remember in 1 second, 800 mail sign / say net, my mother seems to be alive. My mother seems to be alive. Xiao Wanru looked up at Chu Luchen with red eyes. She blurted out and couldn't stop herself. She had wanted to say it slowly and tactfully. After all, it was just a guess of hers. However, when the words reached her throat, she blurted them out and her voice trembled unconsciously. Was it true? At this moment, she felt as if she were in a dream. Was it really true? In fact, even she doubted herself. Are you sure? Chu Luchen asked with a serious face. This was not a small matter. Xiao Jing of the Ministry of Justice only confessed that he killed his brother, but didn't mention Infanta Qinghua. Everyone thought that Infanta Qinghua was dead. Do you still remember what happened to Dr. Chiu? Xiao Wanru pulled Chu Liuchen's sleeve and trembled all over. The chill spread from her heart and made her feel cold all over. I know. Xiao Yinru faked her death and came out of the palace. Chu Luchen nodded. Seeing her like this, his eyes were full of pity. He simply reached out to hold her slender waist tightly and said softly, "It's okay, it's okay. Don't be afraid. I'm here." His gentle voice strangely comforted her, who was overwhelmed with excitement. She exhaled a mouthful of turbid air and began to narrate in an orderly manner. Later, Dr. Chiu was found out that he had given Xiao Jing the medicine of fake death more than 10 years ago. I asked Mingqiu Nun and Dr. Qi to try the medicine according to Dr. Chiu's prescription. The ginseng over 100 years old is more effective. At that time, I found several 80-year-old ginseng and sent them all to Mingqiu Nun and Dr. Qi. At first, they couldn't make it, but later they finally made it. However, one of the herbs was very difficult to control, so they failed many times. Speaking of this, Xiao Wanru pursed her cherry lips. Even if she knew the formula, it was difficult to make it, and it was not something that other doctors could make. It also required some secret techniques of Mingqiu Nun and Dr. Qi. Fortunately, the two of them came from the same sect as Mingqiu Nun. Otherwise, even if they had the formula, they could not make it. Even so, a lot of medicinal materials were still wasted. It was impossible to do so without great strength. The medicinal materials wasted were extremely precious, and some were even more difficult to find than ginseng. Prince Chen's mansion had the most medicinal materials, so it was possible to make a complete set. If it were other mansions, even other mansions would not be able to make a complete set. The conditions were harsh in all aspects, and the medicinal materials were precious and hard to find. The possibility of success was not high, which was the biggest difficulty in concocting this medicine. Mingqiu Nun and Dr. Qi really tried their best to make a little powder not long ago. They found a dog and tried it. As expected, the dog stopped breathing as if it was dead. But it didn't last long, only about 2 hours, and then it recovered. This proved that what Dr. Chiu said before was true. Why does Xiao Jing want the medicine for no reason? Could it be that he ate it himself? Xiao Wanru asked and bit the corner of her lip hard. Chu Luchen stretched out his slender fingers and pressed on the corner of her lip, which made the corner of her lip slip from her teeth. If that's the case, Infanta Qinghua might really be alive. I went to Xiao Jing's courtyard today. There is an attic there. Have you seen it? I've seen it. Chu Luchen nodded. I went up and saw it today. There was no one there, but I could see traces of someone living there. There was a master and a servant, and the master was a woman. There was a dressing table, but I couldn't see anything else. Xiao Wanru calmed down and said, "Someone left?" Chu Luchen immediately heard the key. Yes, a stout old maid left. Yes, a stout old maid left. Her name is Nanny Xiu. She lived in Marquis Xing's mansion more than 10 years ago. After that, she has been living here intermittently for a period of time. Most of the time, she is not in the mansion, but recently she has been living in Xiao Jing's courtyard. She eats and uses more than her master, and she asks a servant girl to specially bring her here. She also complains to Xiao Jing, so Xiao Jing has been protecting her. In fact, not only these, but also the clothes and ornaments her mother took out in the past all showed a fact that she couldn't believe but was eager to believe. Xiao Wanru said, "Do you think it's possible that," speaking of this, she couldn't go on for a moment. She had lived 2 lives. Was it really her mother? Was her mother really locked up by Xiao Jing? It's very likely. Chu Luchen held Xiao Wanru's cold little hands and quietly warmed her hands. An old maid took a person with her. Since Xiao Jing kept her here, he obviously wouldn't let her stay too far away from him. Otherwise, he would be worried. I'll send someone to check it out. I'll find it. I know. Xiao Wanru closed her eyes and simply leaned against him. Because of his words, the heavy stone in her heart became a little more relaxed. She was moved and bitter in the bottom of her heart. After her rebirth, she had always thought that she was strong and tried to make herself stronger. Only when she was with Chu Luchen did she feel soft and warm. She couldn't help but relax her body. Perhaps it was because she was too nervous before, as she leaned into his broad embrace, his scent enveloping her, causing her to close her eyes and fall asleep in a daze. In her daze, someone hugged her, and she hugged him back. She nuzzled into that warm spot, unwilling to leave it for even a moment. Chu Luchen carried Xiao Wanru to the bed, took off her embroidered shoes, untied her outer clothes, and carefully covered her with the quilt. Then he put down the gauze curtain and looked at the delicate little face in the bed, feeling very warm in his heart. He turned around and walked down the stairs. Xiao Xuanzi was waiting on him on the second floor and sat down behind the wide chair. Chu Luchen ordered in a cold voice, "Go to investigate a sturdy old maid and call Qing downstairs. She knows what that person is like." Xiao Xuanzi nodded and said, "Yes, master. I'll go down now." The matter between his master and his wife couldn't be delayed. Chu Luchen tapped his slender fingers gently on the table and said, "Wait a minute. Investigate the one who is close to Marquis Xing's mansion and moved here recently. It won't be more than half a year ago." She hadn't lived in the mansion before, so she should have lived outside the mansion. No one knew that she lived outside the mansion, which was quite similar to the mistress. Thinking about it more deeply, this mistress used to be the servant girl of Infanta Qinghua. If Infanta Qinghua lived with her at that time, it would be very difficult for them to be found. When Xiao Jing went to see the mistress, he could check Infanta Qinghua's situation. Even if someone found out that he just went to see the mistress, he could say that he just went to see the mistress. It was said that Madame Jiang of Marquis Xing had been unable to find Xiao Jing's mistress. If it was just a mistress, there was no need to go through so much trouble to bring her in. There was no need to keep it a secret. Xiao Jing's mistress had just moved to a new residence. At that time, Infanta Qinghua should have been sent to the attic of Marquis Xing's mansion. With Xiao Jing's character, he was so cautious, so he must have rented a place outside. If Infanta Qinghua was really here, it was just that Xiao Jing felt a little uneasy when she was sent out before. It was not a big deal. Did he want to send Infanta Qinghua here after the matter was settled? If he thought in this way, many things suddenly became clear. Chu Luchen was not Xiao Wanru. He was calmer and had a clearer view. In summary, Infanta Qinghua was probably still alive. But he didn't know why Xiao Jing wanted her alive. Xiao Jing had been in trouble, so an old maid couldn't do anything. In the evening, the news came as expected. They had caught the person. When Xiao Wanru heard the news, she immediately followed Chu Luchen to the front hall. When she entered the front hall and saw a woman sitting in a daze on the chair, the memory of her childhood immediately came to her mind. That was really her mother. She was really her birth mother. The woman didn't look very old, around 30 years old. Her clothes were very ordinary, and her eyes looked a little dull. One look and anyone could tell that she had a mental problem. She was still holding a pillow in her hand, and she didn't feel at ease at all. She was beautiful, and even with her eyes like that, she still looked gentle and beautiful. She looked very gentle. Holding the pillow, she just looked at the pillow gently and muttered to herself in a low voice. Xiao Wanru went forward with trembling hands and heard the woman saying, "Shuishua, be good. Don't be afraid of pain. I will shake you and you will fall asleep, okay?" She couldn't help but burst into tears. With a plop, she fell heavily on her knees and reached out to put her hands on Infanta Qinghua's knees. Mother. Before she could finish her words, she had already burst into tears. Infanta Qinghua was startled and moved back. A sturdy old woman was tied behind her and was being held by 2 guards. At this time, her face was ashen and she was in a panic. "Mother, do you still know Zhuozhuo? Do you still know me?" Xiao Wanru raised her tear-stained face and looked at Infanta Qinghua expectantly. Husband, save me." Infanta Qinghua was frightened. She looked around and saw the old maid. She hurriedly hid behind with the pillow in her arms and said hurriedly, "Save me, husband, save me. I don't know anything. I don't know. You, don't kill me. Don't kill my Zhuozhuo. Don't take her away." She held the pillow in her hands tightly and bent down, seeming to protect the pillow in her arms. Xiao Wanru cried so hard that she couldn't even speak. Tears fell down her face and she sobbed. That was her biological mother. Even though she had gone crazy, she had been protecting her. In fact, someone had always loved her, but she had lost her mother. "Get up first and talk." Chu Luchen reached out to pull her up, took the handkerchief from her hand, and wiped her tears carefully. The once gloomy and cold teenager was now full of warmth. Of course, this warmth was only because the person in front of him was Xiao Wanru. "My mother is still alive. My mother is still alive. She has not died." Xiao Wanru pulled Chu Luchen's sleeve with an anxious look, surprised and happy. The joy and sadness could not be expressed in words. Now she could only pull Chu Luchen and let him share her joy and happiness. "Yes, it's good news that Infanta Qinghua is still alive. Don't worry. She doesn't look bad. I heard that she is not in good spirits before, and she is still like this now. It's okay. Don't panic." Chu Luchen knew what she was most afraid of now, so he immediately comforted her in a soft voice. Slowly, Xiao Wanru calmed down and finally came back to her senses. She turned her watery eyes and looked at the overly strong old maid. Chapter 1245. The sturdy old maid was indeed Nanny Xiu, an old maid of Marquis Xing's mansion and Xiao Jing's confidant. She was indebted to Xiao Jing. Her only son fought with someone outside and couldn't walk because his leg was injured. Xiao Jing helped her and treated her son's leg. After her son died, she followed Xiao Jing wholeheartedly. After Infanta Qinghua faked her death, she served her and took her to her mother's residence. After her mother left the mansion, she became Xiao Jing's mistress and lived in an inconspicuous house in the capital city. Every time Xiao Jing came here, he was very careful. He went around a few times, changed the carriage, and even changed his luggage. This was also the reason why Madame of Jiang didn't find him, although she was suspicious. Xiao Jing was very cautious. It was not only about a mistress, but also about Infanta Qinghua. As Infanta Qinghua's former maid, her purpose was to guard and serve her. Infanta Qinghua had been locked up for more than 10 years. Infanta Qinghua's mind was not very clear. When she faked her death, she had been like this for so many years. It was rare for her to be sober. Even if she was sober, she couldn't remember many things. Most of the time, she just did what her mother said. She had always known her mother, so she didn't make a fuss. The surrounding people knew that this family was low-key. The man was a businessman and seldom came to the capital city. They didn't care about Xiao Jing's absence. Infanta Qinghua didn't make a fuss, so no one would find that there was an abnormal woman in this family. The news that Infanta Qinghua was still alive spread. The whole capital city almost went crazy. Infanta Qinghua had not died for so many years. Moreover, she had been imprisoned. Xiao Jing should be hacked into pieces. He killed his brother and imprisoned his eldest sister-in-law. Such a vicious and heinous person had been Marquis Xing for so many years. Previously, they thought that Princess Chen had caused a lot of trouble after returning to Marquis Xing's mansion. More or less, some people stood on Xiao Jing's side and thought that Princess Chen might not be a good person. Now, no one stood up to speak for Xiao Jing. When and great elder princess got the news, she held Infanta Qinghua in her arms and cried so hard that she fainted. If it weren't for her granddaughter, Infanta Qinghua would have either died in prison or lost her value and died in Xiao Jing's hands. When great elder princess was a strong woman, but she cried with tears of blood. The rumors outside first pointed to Marquis Xing's mansion, and then shifted from Marquis Xing to Prince Cheng. Nobody knew when it happened, but many people said that Xiao Jing had a good relationship with Prince Cheng. In the past, Xiao Jing would go to Prince Cheng's mansion and talk about Buddhist scriptures with Prince Cheng. The relationship between Xiao Jing and Prince Cheng had always been normal in the eyes of outsiders. Old Madam believed in Buddhism and would ask people to go up the mountain to ask for some Buddhist scriptures from time to time. She said that she wanted to copy them herself. It was not a big deal for Xiao Jing to ask Prince Cheng for a few rare Buddhist scriptures. Xiao Jing had always been smiling and looked like a kind person, like the smiling Buddha statue in the temple. Besides, with Old Madam's gimmick, it was not a big deal for him to visit Prince Cheng occasionally. What he borrowed would be returned. After a while, he became familiar with Prince Cheng and it was okay for him to visit Prince Cheng more often. At that time, Prince Cheng was devoted to cultivation and had high ambitions. He was not close to other officials. Xiao Jing would not be suspected if he visited Prince Cheng occasionally. But now it was different. Prince Cheng's ambition became more obvious as things happened one after another. Now many people were secretly suspicious of Prince Cheng and felt that he was not as pure and inactive as he looked. Since Prince Cheng had an idea, what about Xiao Jing? Did he really go to Marquis Xing's mansion just to copy Buddhist scriptures for Old Madam? Old Madam of Marquis Xing's mansion was not a good person. Did she really know nothing about her second son's behavior? Even if she did not see Xiao Jing kill his brother, what about what happened to Infanta Qinghua in Marquis Xing's mansion? It was said that although Old Madam did not care about the inner court, she had been controlling it behind the scenes. How could she not know what happened in the mansion? Even though he knew about it, he still watched as his second son acted. How could a person with such a disposition be considered a Buddha? Since she was not really kind, Xiao Jing must be close to Prince Cheng with the help of Old Madam's fake Buddha. In this way, could it be said that Prince Cheng was behind Xiao Jing? There were some things that people thought impossible, but the more they thought about it, the more likely it was. Even if Xiao Jing wanted to do something, he could not do it. After all, his hands were not so long. For example, in the case of Madame of Jiang blocked Xiao Jing's way and prevented him from marrying a concubine. Moreover, it was revealed that he had killed his brother and sister-in-law, so Xiao Jing wanted to kill Madame of Jiang. Xiao Jing did not have so many abilities. It was impossible for Xiao Jing to kill Madame of Jiang in the Ministry of Justice. Then what about Prince Cheng behind him? It must be possible. When one thing was figured out, another thing could be understood. Therefore, when Prince Cheng's subordinates killed Madame of Jiang, only the people of the Ministry of Justice would know when there was no one monitoring Madame of Jiang, so they could leave and investigate the petty official. At that time, no one saw him, so he must be the one who did it. Then they put the blame on Commandery Prince Qing, which caused the fire in Commandery Prince Qing's mansion. Taking advantage of the chaos, they brought people to Commandery Prince Qing's mansion and assassinated Commandery Prince Qing. It was just a cover-up. Then they drew everyone's attention to Commandery Prince Qing. Everything was closely linked and Commandery Prince Qing was pushed to the emperor. For this reason, Commandery Prince Qing went to the palace and cried, saying that he did not know anything. He did not know why the petty official in the Buddha hall was there. It was the place where old princess practiced Buddhism. There was no one else in the Buddha hall except for an old maid. Before the people of the Ministry of Justice found out, old princess had been to the Buddha hall and found nothing. Although Commandery Prince Qing did not mention Prince Cheng, with all kinds of rumors and the fact that Xiao Jing's daughter, Xiao Jie, had returned to her parents' home with a guilty conscience after the accident, the answer was almost on the tip of his tongue. Prince Cheng took action and Xiao Jie acted as a mole, so that the petty official could enter Commandery Prince Qing's mansion silently. Chu Qing cried bitterly and felt very aggrieved. He only said that if he was plotted against like this, it would be better to let his mother live in seclusion and he would still be an idle person without any title. In this way, he would not be plotted against all the time. Since he came out of the Yuhui nunnery, he had been in a panic. In front of all the civil and military officials in the court, Chu Qing burst into tears and knelt on the throne room. Seeing this, many old officials felt sad. After all, he was the flesh and blood of the former emperor. Now he had fallen into such a situation, which was really distressing. Many old officials secretly looked at Prince Qin, who was standing on the rank platform. This was the most legitimate successor of the former emperor and also the prince who had been raised by the emperor. He was the one whom the old officials were most convinced of. In the past, when Prince Qin was in poor health, they did not think much about it. They just wanted Prince Qin to live safely. As for other things, they didn't dare to think about it. With Prince Qin's poor health, even if he sat on the throne, he might not live long. He was not as good as the other emperors, but at least he was healthy. Now that Prince Qin was in good health and had a sense of propriety, Prince Yu and Prince Zhou, who had been optimistic about him, became indecisive. Although some things were concealed, many people were also well informed. They knew that Prince Yu and Prince Zhou had fought several times for a woman, and this woman eventually became the emperor's woman. Because of this, the royal family lost a lot of face. The only good thing was that the woman was dead. On the surface, he was not as legitimate as Prince Qin, but in private his character was like this. Many people secretly thought that Prince Qin, who was in good health, was the most suitable one. At this time, Commandery Prince Qing was in trouble, so many people secretly looked at Chu Luqian. Chu Luqian stood in front of the rank platform without saying a word. His eyes were calm and he didn't say a word. He quietly listened to Chu Qing's crying. His eyes were deep and there was no emotion in them. He was calm at this time, but the emperor was furious and immediately summoned Prince Cheng, who seldom went to the court, to the palace. When they arrived at the main hall, Prime Minister Zhang and when interrogated Prince Cheng again and again. Although Prince Cheng was well prepared, he was almost stumped by the questions and answered reluctantly in the end. The emperor was furious and scolded Prince Cheng. He threw several memorials on Prince Cheng's head and smashed his head. Then he demoted Prince Cheng's title to Commandery Prince Qing, which was the same as Chu Qing. His crime was that he was too close to Xiao Jing and they had a good relationship. Birds of a feather flock together. It was not a good thing to have a good relationship with such a vicious person. Moreover, he was accused of not taking care of the younger generation, which referred to the contradiction between him and Chu Qing. In addition, he was accused of being disrespectful to the elders. It was said that when the Empress Dowager was ill, he still kept in touch with Xiao Jing and even went sightseeing with him. There was no direct evidence against Prince Cheng, but these crimes were enough to make the emperor lower Prince Cheng's title. Especially when the Empress Dowager was ill, he was still so leisurely and the emperor still visited the Empress Dowager every day. However, Prince Cheng didn't show filial piety and ignored the Empress Dowager's kindness to him. All kinds of crimes made Prince Cheng so angry that his nose became crooked. He wanted to visit the Empress Dowager every day, but he had to get the emperor's consent. Moreover, he used the excuse of cultivating in seclusion, so how could he go to the Empress Dowager every day to pay respect to her? If you want to incriminate someone, you can always find excuses. However, Prince Cheng didn't dare to make trouble. The more he made trouble, the more difficult it would be to deal with. If he was not careful, he might really get himself into trouble. Whoever was involved in the matter of Marquis Xing's mansion would be unlucky. Prince Cheng would not lose the big picture because of a small gain. Although the emperor had no evidence to prove that he really did it, he also had no evidence to prove that he definitely did not do it. Now that Prince Cheng had become Commandery Prince Cheng, his title was reduced, his salary was deducted, and he was asked to meditate in the mansion and was not allowed to go anywhere. It was equivalent to being grounded. He was so angry that he glared at Chu Qing, who was crying there. Then he gritted his teeth and endured everything. He could endure everything. It was not the right time yet. He could endure everything. Xiao Jing, who was in the Ministry of Justice's prison, also knew that Princess Qinghua had been found. He just looked up to the sky and laughed 3 times. After that, he didn't say anything else. Even when the Ministry of Justice punished him again, he didn't say a word. He just wanted to die and didn't say a word about Princess Qinghua. Chapter 1246. 2 Yamen runners dragged Xiao Jing into a room. Xiao Jing staggered in and saw Chu Luchen sitting lazily in the shadow of the lamp. He sat on a stool on one side. He was going to die anyway, so he was not afraid of anything. Xiao Jing, why did you imprison Infanta Qinghua? Xiao Xuanzi took a step forward and asked coldly. No reason. I imprisoned her if I wanted to, Xiao Jing said. He was really not afraid of anything now. The Ministry of Justice had tortured him many times and asked him about this matter. He always said the same thing. He was a dying man, so he had nothing to be afraid of. Do you think it doesn't matter since you are going to die anyway? Chu Liuchen's black pupils turned, and his smile was as elegant as a handsome scholar who had just walked out of a painting, gentle as jade. But in such a place, even when Shichi, who was originally gentle as jade, was infected with a bit of killing intent, not to mention Chu Luchen, who was not really gentle as jade. Such a smile in Xiao Jing's blood-red eyes looked gloomy and treacherous. Prince Chen, I don't care what you say. I'll do whatever you say. After calming himself down, Xiao Jing sneered. He couldn't sit still and fell to the ground. Holding the legs of the stool, he raised his head and looked at Chu Luchen provocatively. He was really not afraid that Chu Luchen would kill him now. Compared to being cut into pieces, he would rather die now. But the Ministry of Justice kept a close eye on him, so he had no chance to die. He took a breath and spat a mouthful of blood in Chu Liuchen's direction, intending to provoke Chu Luchen. Others might not dare to kill him when the Ministry of Justice decided the punishment, but Prince Chen dared. Xiao Jing was very willing to let Chu Luchen kill him with a sword. Right now, the only reason he was alive was to endure this life. Xiao Xuanzi stood in front of Chu Luchen, and Xiao Jing's blood spat on him. He was so angry that his face turned pale and he wanted to give Xiao Jing 2 slaps. Do you think I can't do anything to you? Chu Luchen said lazily, Xiao Jing, don't forget that you still have a son. So what? If I die, I won't be able to see anything. It's useless for me to worry. Xiao Jing's heart skipped a beat, but he didn't seem to care. Xiao Jing, do you think that I won't know if you don't say anything? Your crime is very serious, and your son will certainly be implicated. Therefore, his official title will be removed, and he will never be an official again. Moreover, his descendants will not be able to become an official in the Imperial court for the next 3 generations. Chu Liuchen's eyes fell on Xiao Jing with great interest, and his words were very meaningful. Xiao Jing's hands trembled, but he said, This has nothing to do with Huan. He was still young at that time and didn't know anything. He has always been good to Princess Chen. Since Princess Chen entered the mansion, Huan has been protecting her. If it hadn't been for Huan, Princess Chen wouldn't have been so peaceful in the past 3 years. Do you mean that your son is still protecting my princess? Chu Luchen raised his eyebrows, and his smile was a little enchanting, but it made people feel cold. Xiao Jing involuntarily swallowed a mouthful of saliva. Although that was what he meant, after hearing Chu Liuchen's words, he inexplicably felt that it was not what he meant. Princess Chen and Huan are good friends, so she definitely won't cut off all of Huan's paths. Xiao Jing argued. But you have harmed my princess's family. Even if I want to let you go, I can't. That's the order from my uncle, but I'm afraid it will be difficult for your son to live. Chu Luchen smiled slightly. There was a sense of sarcasm. Prince, what do you want? Xiao Jing's pupils contracted. He didn't care about Xiao Huan's current difficult situation, but he had to live. Only when he was alive could he have a way out. Don't you know what I am like? Aren't you trying to provoke me? If it were someone else, you definitely wouldn't do that. The reason why you are doing this is because I am willful and reckless. Sometimes, even my uncle can only follow my lead, right? Chu Luchen stretched out his slender fingers and knocked on the table. Now I don't like your son, and I want you to die without descendants. Chu Luchen still said the last sentence with a smile. There was not even a little bit of anger on his handsome face, and he said the words of exterminating the whole family gently. Even though Xiao Jing wanted to die, he couldn't help but shiver at this moment. His face was as pale as snow, without a trace of blood. If this was said by other princes, he wouldn't believe it. But this was Chu Luchen, who even the Emperor and Empress Dowager gave in to. If he really did such a thing and exterminated the whole family, even if the emperor knew about it, he would pretend that he didn't know. His son and daughter were all his hope. It wasn't because he had the spirit of sacrificing himself for others, but because he had to do this. He had committed a serious crime, and he couldn't escape. So he had to risk his life not to tell all the secrets. He left one last secret for Infanta Qinghua, which was the most important reason why he imprisoned Infanta Qinghua. Prince Cheng has now become Commandery Prince Cheng, and he is grounded by my uncle. In the future, he is not allowed to go out of the city or go to Yuyun Temple for no reason. If he really wants to be a monk, he can do it in the mansion. There are no women in Prince Cheng's mansion, so it's the same as a monk. Chu Luchun said casually, glancing at Xiao Jing with a smile. His tepid look made Xiao Jing tremble all over. He raised his head and looked at Chu Luchun with difficulty. This sick and weak prince had never caught his eye. Even though he later recovered, Xiao Jing had never really paid attention to him. This was also the reason why Xiao Wanru could marry into Prince Chen's mansion smoothly. But now Xiao Jing felt that he was really blind. He only thought that Prince Chen was sick, capricious, and useless. If the one in front of him was really useless, then the other princes were even more useless. No one could see it as clearly as this Prince Chen. But looking at the certainty in his expression, Xiao Jing knew that he must know something, or that Prince Cheng already had some things under his control. Xiao Jing looked gloomy. He wanted to say something, but he didn't know where to start, so he pursed his lips and closed his mouth again. Your daughter is not in Prince Cheng's mansion now. Prince Cheng may have given her to someone else. I don't know whether it's Prince Yu or Prince Zhou. I think it's most likely to be Prince Zhou. After all, Prince Zhou is hot-tempered and impulsive. But I also heard that most of his concubines died in his mansion. When Prince Zhou is unhappy, he will easily vent his anger on these women. They are just nameless women, so it's not a big deal for a few of them to die. Chu Luchun continued to attack Xiao Jing. His words sounded ordinary, but they made Xiao Jing tremble with fear, and his face turned red with excitement. Don't tell me you don't know that your daughter faked her death to leave the palace. Infanta Qinghua got Dr. Chiu's medicine and faked her death to leave the palace. Of course, your daughter can do it too. Entering the palace is a dead end, so she escaped. I believe that soon, the palace will look for your daughter. Your daughter can't see the light for the rest of her life. Finally, she died in Prince Zhou's mansion without a name. Chu Luchun seemed not to see Xiao Jing's excitement. The black mist in his eyes became thicker, and there was a kind of evil spirit that people couldn't see clearly, which was treacherous and hard to distinguish. Xiao Jing was so shocked that his face turned pale and his hands trembled. It was impossible for anyone else to know these things. How did Chu Luchun know? And why was his daughter in Prince Zhou's mansion? He didn't believe it. It was impossible. His daughter had followed Prince Cheng and was already his woman. Prince Cheng had promised him that if he ascended to the throne in the future, he would give his daughter a high position. Even if she couldn't be the empress for the time being, she could do it with her ability. In the future, his branch would definitely be successful, and the one they relied on was his daughter. The most important thing for him to let his daughter marry into the mansion was to let his daughter be his daughter again. It sounded strange, but the meaning was very clear. If his daughter faked her death to leave the palace, there would be no Xiao Yenru in this world. In the future, when his daughter appeared in front of others, she had to get the title of his daughter. She was also his daughter and his daughter. As long as he recognized her as his daughter, she could also appear in front of others with a justifiable reason. Both of them were his daughters, so it was normal for them to look alike. She could live in seclusion and rarely go out. In the future, when she entered the palace, ordinary people couldn't see her. As for those who saw her, they didn't dare to say anything. But what did he hear just now? It was said that his daughter was sent to Prince Zhou's mansion and served Prince Zhou without a name. His daughter already had a relationship with Prince Cheng. How could she go to Prince Zhou's mansion? Xiao Jing, do you think that Prince Cheng will protect Xiao Yenru as well as your son? Do you think that if I wanted to kill Xiao Huang, my uncle, who had just been demoted, would dare to say anything? Chu Luchun smiled. His eyes were as clear as water, and he looked very carefree, but it made Xiao Jing feel a chill in his heart. He knew that Chu Luchen was not joking. What he said was true. Although the smile in his eyes was gentle, there was a hidden bloody aura. If he took action, his son would not be able to escape. Not only his son, but also his daughter would not be able to escape. He blinked his eyes hard and fell to the ground. After taking a few deep breaths, he felt alive again. After my brother left the capital city, he originally went to the south of the Yangtze River. Later, he received the Imperial edict and went to the border to find some calligraphy and paintings. I want to know whether my brother has found them or not from Infanta Qinghua. A few calligraphy and paintings? Before Chu Luchen knew that Xiao Jing's psychological defense had been broken, so he stopped pressuring him and asked lazily. There is a place hidden in the calligraphy and paintings, which refers to the place where the former emperor's tiger talisman is placed. Xiao Jing was in pain all over his body. The spirit that supported him before had collapsed. He answered whatever Chu Luchen asked and did not dare to disobey Chu Luchen anymore. He clearly realized that his disobedience would not only have no effect but would also put his children in danger. Prince Qin was the most terrible person. Others only thought that he was seriously ill and no one cared about him, a patient who abandoned himself to despair. No one expected that this patient could be so powerful after he recovered. He could almost control everyone's thoughts and actions in his heart. Xiao Jing smiled sadly. At this time, since Prince Qin was willing to hold his daughter in his hands, there was no chance for him to do so. Prince Qin had shown his fangs and no one could hide from him. With Prince Qin's cruel means, only death awaited those who did not compromise. Chapter 1247. Xiao Jing's mind suddenly became clear, and he suddenly remembered something that happened a long time ago. It happened when he was at the border. At that time, he was going to assassinate his elder brother. He wanted the title of Duke Xing. Why could his elder brother accept the title calmly just because he was born a few years earlier than him? He also worked hard, and he could also carry forward Duke Xing's mansion. At the border, he met a strange old man, who didn't look like a man of Dongtsang, but like a man of Su country he saw this time. At that time, he stopped his horse to rest by the roadside with his men. The strange old man came to him and shook his head. He was curious, so he asked someone to bring the old man over and asked him why he shook his head at him. The old man said with a smile that he couldn't change anything, but told him that everything would be repaid in the end. What he got today, he would lose tomorrow. It would be his turn to break up a family one day. Now it was true. Although his elder brother was dead, Infanta Qinghua was still alive, and so were his elder brother's children. But what about him? He had nothing. Madame Jiang was dead and he was going to die. His daughter became a plaything. And his son, even if his son could survive, it would be hopeless. At that time, the old man said something very strange, which made people feel scared. Xiao Jing remembered it inexplicably and couldn't help muttering to himself subconsciously. If the dragon and the phoenix are separated, it will be a sacrifice of life and death, and the sky will be dyed with blood. What? Chu Luchen didn't understand what he said, and inexplicably felt unhappy. He knocked on the table with his fingers and asked unhappily, "What?" "Nothing. I heard a sentence before," Xiao Jing said bitterly. He really had nothing now. My elder brother seems to have found some calligraphy and paintings, but I don't know how many there are. Infanta Qinghua can't tell clearly. She seldom wakes up, and when she wakes up, she talks vaguely. It's inconvenient for me to follow her around and ask her about this, so I asked her to fake her death and live in my hands. I can ask her at any time. Later, I finally found out that it was in the capital city. After my eldest brother found it, he sent it to his courtyard in the capital city. I went to find it and gave it to Prince Cheng. As Xiao Jing said, some blurry shadows flashed before his eyes. In the tall palaces, blood was dripping. Many beautiful women, including palace maids and were lying on the ground with their faces covered with blood. Their feet and hands were cut off in several places. Looking at her twisted face, one could imagine how painful her death was. How could it be like this? Impossible. How could it be like this? Xiao Jing spat out a mouthful of blood and collapsed to the ground. His consciousness blurred. Had he let his daughter end up like this after working so hard for so long? Someone, take him away. Seeing that Xiao Jing had fainted, Chu Luchen waved his hand and Xiao Xuanzi shouted. 2 yamen runners came from outside the door and dragged Xiao Jing out. Chu Luchen stood up and walked out of the room with Xiao Xuanzi. They happened to meet Wen Shiqi, who had just come over. Greetings, Your Highness. Wen Shiqi stepped aside and saluted respectfully. You're welcome, Your Excellency. Xiao Jing has fainted. Chu Luchen said with a smile. It doesn't matter. Wen Shiqi said seriously. Chu Luchen didn't move. After looking at Wen Shiqi for a while, he suddenly said with a smile, I heard that Prime Minister Wen is going to choose a husband for you. Have you chosen a suitable one? Thank you for your concern, Your Highness. Not yet. Wen Shiqi said slowly word by word. You're not young anymore. You can't always forget your important affairs for the country. When you get married, let me have a drink at your wedding. Chu Luchen teased. I'll definitely invite you, Your Highness. Wen Shiqi lowered his eyes and said, That's the best. You won't be alone at night. It's really lonely. Chu Liuchen's handsome lips curved slightly. I'll leave first. I'll entrust the Ministry of Justice to you. Your Highness, rest assured. I'll definitely take good care of it. Wen Shiqi looked at his toes and said, Hearing his words, Chu Luchen was satisfied. He nodded to him with a smile and walked forward. Wen Shiqi still lowered his head and looked at his shoes motionlessly. After a long time, when he couldn't hear Chu Liuchen's footsteps, he raised his head stiffly and looked in the direction where Chu Luchen left. He slowly put down his clenched fists. What else could he do? Wasn't it all a dream? It was good that she was living well now. Prince Chen was a dangerous person, but such a dangerous person had always been very gentle to her. He could see that gentleness. So what else could he do? Even if he was unwilling, what else could he do? A bitter smile bloomed on his handsome face, with indescribable bitterness. Chu Luchen didn't go back to Prince Chen's mansion but to Ru and Great Elder Princess's mansion. Early in the morning, Xiao Wanru went to Ru and Great Elder Princess's mansion to see her grandma and mother. She was worried about Infanta Qinghua's condition. Although she knew that her grandma loved her mother more than her, she was still worried. When Chu Luchen entered the door, he saw that there were a lot of people in the room. Although Ru and Great Elder Princess's eyes were still red, she looked fine. From time to time, she looked at Infanta Qinghua, who was sitting aside and doing embroidery. Infanta Qinghua was very quiet, as if there was nothing else in the room. She only muttered to herself occasionally. Xiao Wanru sat on the other side of her, and Xiao Yuanhao also looked at her mother quietly. The people in the room were very quiet and looked at Infanta Qinghua quietly. Everyone couldn't hide the sadness on their faces. Infanta Qinghua was their relative, but now she became like this. How could they not be sad? Seeing Chu Luchen come in, Xiao Wanru hurriedly stood up, walked to him in a few steps, and pulled his sleeve. She knew that Chu Luchen had gone to the Ministry of Justice early in the morning. Chu Luchen understood and said to Bu and Great Elder Princess, Grandma, Zhuozhua and I will go to the side to talk. Now he called her the same way Xiao Wanru did. Go ahead. Ri and Great Elder Princess nodded, looked at Xiao Yunhao beside her and said lovingly, How? Go to school. Your mother will be fine. She will be fine in the future. I will take good care of your mother and won't let anything happen to her again. How? Go to school. Chu Luchen knew that Xiao Yuanhao was here at this time because he didn't go to school, so he scolded him with a smile. Xiao Yuanhao was now convinced by his brother-in-law, so he didn't insist anymore. He got up with red eyes and bowed to Infanta Qinghua. Then he said goodbye to Ru and Great Elder Princess and followed Xiao Wanru out. After going outside, Xiao Yuanhao grabbed the corner of Xiao Wanru's dress and said with hatred, Sister, was it really Xiao Jing who did this to mother? Of course it was him. He wants all of us to die. His life is not only mine, but also yours. Xiao Wanru nodded with red eyes. In her last life, she had never expected that her mother was still alive. Now, although her mother was mentally abnormal, She still had a chance to serve her, which made her feel happy. She was most afraid that her mother would never come back after she died. Therefore, she and Hao were not orphans without parents anymore. "I'll kill him," Xiao Yuanhao said with hatred, with some blood in his eyes. "Won't it be too easy for him to kill him? If you are not afraid, you can go to see him when he executes his punishment." Chu Luchen patted his head and said, "I'm not afraid. I will go to see him," Xiao Yuanhao said with gritted teeth. He wanted to see the old bastard cut into pieces as a sacrifice to his father's soul in heaven. If possible, he was even willing to execute him in person. He used to regard Xiao Jing as his uncle, so he hated him now. He thought that these people were all his relatives, but they turned out to be vicious snakes. "Okay, go to school now." Chu Luchen nodded. "Sister, brother-in-law, don't worry. I will definitely be successful and won't let you down." Xiao Yuanhao nodded and took 2 steps. Suddenly, he turned around and said solemnly, as if he had grown up overnight. Xiao Wanru's eyes were a little sore again. She immediately nodded and watched the young boy leave firmly. In this life, she finally didn't have to be separated from her flesh and blood, and she finally didn't have to watch herself fall into such a hopeless situation. Her hand gently fell into a familiar big hand, which wrapped half of her little hand in it, with some warmth and gentleness. "Let's go. Let's talk while walking." Xiao Wanru nodded, and they walked casually hand in hand. "Xiao Jing wants to find the calligraphy and painting from your father. He said that the tiger token of the late emperor is hidden in it." Chu Luchen said slowly, "Isn't the tiger token in the hands of concubine Lan?" Xiao Wanru calmed down and asked in surprise. Concubine Lan had given the tiger token to her before. "That's half of it." Chu Luchen said implicitly. You mean that the other half is not in the Imperial Palace but in the calligraphy and painting?" Xiao Wanru asked and pressed between her eyebrows with the other hand. "It should be." Chu Luchen said, "It is said that your father was originally going to the south of the Yangtze River at that time. Later, the emperor ordered him to change his route and track down these calligraphy and paintings. After your father died, no one mentioned it again. The emperor asked my father to go there. Then how did he know that my father was at the border?" Xiao Wanru's heart trembled and she looked at Chu Luchen with tears in her eyes. Everyone said that her father ignored the overall situation and took her mother away, but in fact, her father carried the emperor's mission. However, from the beginning to the end, the emperor didn't ask more. Did he think it was useless to ask more? Chu Luchen slightly tightened his grip on her hand and said with a little coldness in his soft eyes, "He doesn't want others to know that he also wants to get the tiger token of the late emperor." Xiao Wanru felt that she couldn't go on asking. Some questions seemed to be inappropriate no matter how she asked. She took a deep breath and slowly calmed down, and then said, "My father left a few pieces of calligraphy and paintings, which are all in my hands. At that time, I almost had an accident, and you found me because of those calligraphy and paintings." Xiao Wanru had been suppressing this matter in her heart and hadn't said it. She had thought that she was making groundless accusations, but now she clearly knew that it was true. Someone really wanted those calligraphy and paintings. Not only others, but also Qin Huayong. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.